Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto had the chance to exist in the DC universe. Living a new life in another reality, Naruto now must handle a lot of complications of him interacting with various heroes, villains, and anti-heroes. How will things go with them interacting with a nobody? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 5, Something Starts from Nothing. Naruto held in a groan as the light from the window hit his eyes and slowly opened them to glare at the sun peeking through several buildings. Even though he grew accustomed to be a morning person, there were days that he would rather sleep in entirely like in the good old days. The publishers soon felt a draft on several places on his body and guessed that he must have slept on top of his covers again, or said covers were thrown off during the middle of the night. It was then he heard a content sigh and felt something trying to burrow its way deeper into his well-muscled chest. Looking down, he saw a mop of messy red hair. That's when the memories of last night flooded into the front of his mind like a tidal wave. For a brief moment, the Silverred thought it was all just a dream of fully professing his love to the woman he truly cared for while giving each other their virginities. In response to this, he tightened his hold on Pam, causing her to groan and stir in his arms before lifting her head up and rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, Pam," he said to her softly as the botanist looked at him for a moment before smiling. "Good morning to you too, Naruto. I'm glad you enjoyed your gift last night," she said as she leaned up and captured his lips for a few moments for a morning kiss. Once he broke the contact, he smiled. "And I'm glad to receive it. You gave me something that will be hard for me to forget for a long time." This got her to giggle as she shifted herself on him, causing her to groan a bit in discomfort for some reason. Looking down, she realized where the discomfort came from before smiling a little. "Well, it seemed that you left me very sore down there. I'm probably going to be limping for the next several hours. Thank God it's Christmas Day and I don't have to work." "Oh right. It's Christmas morning and he needs to get things going for the day." He soon shifted his form and tried to get out of bed, but Pam held him down into place. "And where do you think you're going?" Pam said with a slight glare. She wasn't done with her narrow pillow just yet. Ever since the first day she cuddled and slept in the same bed as him, that she practically found the perfect pillow. Every other pillow she had at her apartment couldn't please her anymore, and just the way his ribs were placed made things more comfortable for her to sleep on. For the love of Mother Nature, he ruined pillows for her, damn it. "Well, I was going to make us a Christmas breakfast to start out the day and see what we will do from there, my dear," he said to her as she slowly let go of him with her little glare still present. "It is good," Pam said with a pout. "Ugh, she wants her comfy pillow back." He chuckled as he moved off of the bed and felt his legs brush something wet. Looking down once he stood up, he saw the mess they made in their first time lovemaking last night. It was a mixture of their juices, and saw traces of Pam's blood on it from when he broke her hymen. Seems he will be having the constant experience of changing the sheets quite often now. A little payment for pleasure and he'll be fine with that. "So, what would you like exactly? Pancakes or waffles?" he asked as he grabbed his boxer shorts off of the ground and put them on. He'll be taking a shower after breakfast, of course, so it wouldn't matter to get fully cleaned up before then. "I would like pancakes. For some reason it seems appropriate." "How so?" "Well, when I was younger, my mother made pancakes for me every Christmas morning and it made things seem special for me. She even said that even her mother did the exact same thing for her when she was a child," Pam said with nostalgia kicking in as memories of those special mornings coming back to her, causing her to well up some tears. Seeing her shift in mood, he guessed that it was something Pam missed from her childhood and years after. He went around the bed and cupped her face before kissing her lips to raise her spirits up a little. "Then I'll just have to make the best damn pancakes I can muster to help make up for what your bastard of a father took away from you. I know it won't be really the same, but it's something, right?" he said to her, making her smile before kissing him again. Once he left the room, she wondered what she should do now, since she honestly had nothing else going on. On days off from work, Pam would either read up on latest developments posted in scientific journals of any variety or pick up a book she got from the library and go through it within a day or so. Even on any given day she would be watering her plants at her apartment. Given the fact this isn't her apartment and her boyfriend/lover has very few plants, that she would need to find something to read to keep her mind occupied. Sure, there are possible plans for the day with Naruto, but some habits tend to come up at odd times. This is one of them. Pam soon got up from the bed and decided to stretch a little, especially with her feeling sore from their first time having intercourse, so she can possibly walk properly sooner than later. Feeling a bit drafty, with her in the nude, she found Naruto's t-shirt and slipped it on so she could feel a tad better before resuming her stretching. At one point, her eyes caught something on the bed's nightstand and didn't remember seeing it there last night. Maybe she did, but ignored it when getting things ready for last night's activity. Either way, Pam's curiosity took over as she got back onto the bed and crawled towards the item in question. A notebook? She picked up the notepad and saw a faded icon in the background of a sharp cross that had curves on the bottom. Her focus turned towards the writing and started to read its contents as she sat back down with her stretching long forgotten. Meanwhile, in the kitchen. Even though I've made breakfast for Pam several times, I can't help but feel really nervous this time. The Silverette said to himself as he was gathering ingredients from the pantries and the refrigerator. Despite his calm appearance, he was flipping the fuck out with what he had done last night. He felt like a young teenager again with him losing his virginity to a beautiful woman. Well, not just a beautiful woman, but someone he had actually fallen in love with. He felt so excited that his emotions were slowly affecting him physically. His mind had so many things going on at the moment, with making this breakfast perfect for Pam being the main priority. He was practically shaking now making him berate himself that he isn't doing things right now. The publisher needed to take a breather and come back to this with a clear head. Naruto assumed that Pam must have gone back to sleep now and could wake her up when he's done. For now, he hoped there was something that could keep his mind occupied from making breakfast for even just a moment. Knock knock, ding dong ding dong. Huh, convenient. I'll be there in a second. The Silverette said as he placed the last of the ingredients on the kitchen counter before heading to his loft's entrance. Ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong. Alright. I'm coming. Naruto yelled out as he opened the door to see a familiar sight. A sight he would rather be 10 or so feet away from right now. Chuckles phrasing. The person chuckled. Great, you. The hazel-eyed publisher said as a little headache was coming his way. Oh, come on, don't be like that. Yeah, I will. So, what do you want, Anko? Naruto said to his former tenant's bodyguard/girlfriend. During the past several weeks after Naruto met the Anko of this reality, he kept on seeing her every now and then. At first it was just because she wanted to get her copies of the Gutsy Ninja, Ika and Erasure Raiden books signed, which he was quite used to. Naruto would occasionally see her at random places, making him think that Kurama must have sent her to keep an eye out for him. Well, he was half right. She would show up out of nowhere and hound him for when he will start writing a new book before Copperhead would drag her ass back to work kicking and screaming like a little girl. Yeah, seemed that this Anko seemed a bit more childish from the one he knew. Well, now that he thought about it, he didn't have that much of an interaction with Orochimaru's former student. So he probably didn't know much about that particular Anko all that well, so he let it slide. Anyways, during the various interactions with Anko made him borderline tolerate her because of her dating Kurama. But other than that, he wouldn't want to deal with her that often. So, question was, why was she here? Was she here to bug him yet again on a possible book or running an errand for Kurama? Well, I'm here on an errand for my Foxy Woxy. The purple-haired assassin stated. Which would be to wish you the best for the holiday season. The former shinobi raised an eyebrow on hearing that. Was that all Kurama was going to do for him? Wouldn't it better if he called me or came in person to say that? He questioned. Anko just stood there for a few moments before slapping her face and muttered something. She ran off to somewhere and not too long came back with a package wrapped in Christmas-style paper. "Sorry on that, forgot he wanted me to give this to you." She said Naruto was given his gift. "Well, it's good to know he cares," he muttered to himself. "So is that all, or are you going to hound me yet again on me possibly working on another book?" "Nope. I'm all fine and dandy, Mr. Uzumaki. In fact, I already know you are planning on writing the next Ika book quite soon." "Why are you so sure?" he said in suspicion. Just the way she said it made it seem he was planning on doing a new book, yet he wasn't planning on writing smut at all. "Well, I was going to drop off the package last night when I saw you and your girlfriend romping it out in your bedroom," she said, all innocently, causing him to drop the package on his foot and widen his eyes in surprise. "You were peeping on us?" he yelled out loud in both shock and the pain. "Damn, whatever is in the box must be bloody heavy." "Well, yeah. It seems so exciting to see you go at it. Kurama told me some stories in passing about how the Ika works came into being, and I thought that you were finally getting inspiration to get onto your work," she said in a giddy tone that was causing his eyes to twitch like it was no tomorrow. "So, are you gonna be working on it now?" Anko asked in a hopeful tone. Her response was him slamming the door to her face. "I didn't hear a no," she yelled out in hopes of him hearing her. He soon limped over to the couch and decided to open up what Kurama had sent him. The wrapping was soon ripped off and thrown in a trash bag he had on the side for when he and Pam were gonna open some presents. Once opening the box, he saw a letter on top of the packaging peanuts and decided to check the letter before the actual content of the present. "Hello Naruto, it's been a while. I know this isn't a good way to chat with you to wish you happy holidays and all that fun stuff, but things have been busy as of late that need to have my complete focus on. Even though things have been complicated and time-consuming, I always try to think of you often and worry on how things are going for you on your end. It's the reason why I have either Anko or Claudia, that's Copperhead's name if you were wondering, watch you from afar and report back to me every so often to at least ease my nerves. With you having no way to fully tap into your old abilities has had me on edge. This in turn has made it hard to concentrate at times, but if anything happens to you then I'm ready to come help you if needed. But when finding out that Thunder God and Riptide had taken interests in you in their own ways, I needed to come warn you in person so you could hopefully be ready for them. Wish that I could have warned you sooner since Minato came in and almost killed both you and your woman. Even on the next day when Kushina stopped on by for her own agenda, which I have no idea her true agenda is exactly, made things a bit worse. So, when I learned that for the past several weeks you have been training in your powers like I suggested made me relax a little knowing that you're trying to defend yourself better. But I'm not going to be there all the time to possibly have either myself or one of my agents pull your ass out of the fire even with you having access to these new abilities you have. Knowing you, you'll always try to run into danger for those that you care for and who are truly precious to you. So, I decided to get you something to hopefully make up for the years being out of contact with you since we came to this world to at least help protect you as best as it could. Pulled whatever sources and materials I could get to make the contents of the package for you. I know the current appearance isn't much, but you'll do something to change it at some point to suit your tastes. I wish you a pleasant holiday and New Year. Kurama. P.S. Just so you know Naruto, even after all these past years, you have earned my trust ever since you had released me from that blasted seal. I still thank you for that. P.P.S. If you ever tell anyone how sappy I was, just like you told Claudia and Anko me being rabbit ears, then I'll come to your home and cut off what makes you a man. Naruto couldn't help but smile as he read through the letter that old Fuzzbutt had sent him. It sincerely touched him and made him glad that this helped make his morning seem even more better than it already is. It made him feel great knowing he had earned the hybrid's trust and he'll do what he can to keep it that way. It'll probably be hard to do so, but it'll be worth it. Though it would have been better if Kurama had actually told him all that in person, but he'll let it slide since it's the holidays. The Uzumaki's attention was then turned towards the contents of his present as he put his hands inside and soon pulled out several things and laid them out on the floor. It seemed to look a lot like a black and white motorcyclist suit in some ways with the guards on both the legs and arms, but it also had a metal chest plate with a utility belt. To top off the outfit was a helmet that had no sliding parts on the visor, but when he had put it on it had a computer system of sorts inside of it. Seems he'll need to wear it sometime and break it while training so he could get used to wearing it. And Kurama was right, he'll think of something to make the outfit look different, but that'll come at a later time. When looking at the time, he realized that he'll need to get back into cooking the Christmas breakfast. Before he went to the kitchen to do so, he gathered up the suit and put it back into its box to hide it in his hallway closet. -10 or so minutes later. Sorry for the wait, Pam. I hope you're hungry, Naruto said with a smile on his face as he peeked his head into the bedroom. I made your favorite of vegan blueberry/chocolate chip pancakes with scrambled tofu and kale. After reading Kurama's note, Naruto felt he had all the distraction he needed to somewhat clear his head for him to finally decide what to make for Pam's breakfast. For his meal is mostly a non-vegan version of what she is having of scrambled eggs along with blueberry/chocolate chip pancakes. Currently their meals were already at the dining room table waiting to be consumed. That's nice, Naruto, Pam mumbled as her focus was mainly on her reading material. What you got there? He questioned as he walked over to her and saw the passage that was in her hands. Act I. Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess. We seek it thus, and take to the sky. Ripples form on the water's surface. The wandering soul knows no rest. Where did you get that? Naruto said as he was nervous of her reading the notebook. The item in question was something that manifested from his powers a few weeks ago for no reason at all. All he was doing at the time in his company's office was going over documents pertaining to reports and sales when he felt a weight was placed on his piles of papers when he was going to take the next on to work on. Naruto inspected the notebook and it had the same symbol he saw on his throwing cards and guessed the book came from him for some reason. Ever since it first appeared, he had little urges to fill its pages with anything. At first it was just him putting down basic information to contact others or even just using it like sticky notes for offhanded reminders. Then things progressed after reading some books he had in both his office and at his loft that he started writing down various, random ideas for books. From there he ended up writing and sketching like he needed to and it worried him until he did the brain dump onto its pages. That was another thing with the notebook, no matter how many pages he filled out, there seemed to be no end of how many pages it contained. The former shinobi was at a loss when trying to figure out how the notebook worked, especially when he was frustrated on the current story he was writing. Like any normal writer when frustrated, he would end up tearing the page on accident and would start over, but when it did, it seemed to mend itself or make a new page to replace the damaged one. With so many pages inside of the notebook, he placed sticky note tabs in each section to help have things organized. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. Found it on your nightstand and curiosity got the better of me, Pam said as she turned the page to keep on reading its contents but found it stopped on the previous page. And I gotta say this is really, really good. Really? You think it's good? Very. At this, Naruto had left out a breath that he somehow kept in that was building up in his chest. He was actually nervous on her reading what he had for that story so far. It seemed to be his main story idea he had been writing in the book's contents. But a question that seemed to pop up in his head was, how did it show up here? He distinctly remembered leaving it in his office at the firm, but how did it show up here all of a sudden? I can't wait to read more of this loveless story you have here. It's very engaging and poetic. The style of this kind of epic poem could possibly be best-selling once it's finished, Pam said to her boyfriend with a smile before looking into the notebook again and saw something that piqued her interest. Well, that's good to know, honey. This kind of project seemed pretty important and been working on it every now and again, Naruto said as he rubbed the back of his head with a nervous chuckle. He was waiting for a reply of any sort but didn't hear any as he kept hearing the sound of pages turning. The publisher then looked over to the botanist and saw her really drawn into something with a faint blush on her cheeks. Okay, something seems wrong here. Naruto thought. I know I stopped writing Loveless shortly after starting Act 1, but what is she reading now? He bent down to her level and looked at the pages she was on right now. What the both of them were now reading was something very sexual and raunchy in nature that it would be hard to describe further than that. When did I write this? He yelled out in his head as he tried to figure out how and when he wrote this. This was clearly in his handwriting and it showed very explicit detail on what is going on. But he didn't know what was going on here. You know, Pam said, knocking Naruto out of his thoughts as he looked towards her red in the face with a certain gleam in her eyes. After reading this, I would like to continue what we left off last night, Naruto. He was about to say something when she pulled his face down and engaged in a heated makeout session. His thoughts soon went away as the two engaged in their new activity for the morning. The afterlife. Giggling could be heard as a man was peering down at the scene before him. He was a tall man with waist-length, spiky white hair that was tied back in a ponytail with two shoulder-length bangs framing his face. He had red tear-mark lines that ran down from his eyes with a noticeable wart on the right side of his nose. He wore a short white kimono shirt with matching pants along with traditional wooden sandals. To finish off his look was the halo hovering over his head to indicate that he has died. For one who doesn't know this man, this was the late sage of Ndemayaboku and self-proclaimed super pervert of the elemental nations, Jiraiya the Gallant. For what he is doing, he was watching his godson every so often as usual when he saw him and his beautiful girlfriend finally do the deed last night, and he couldn't be more proud. Of course, a little bit of a shock was that during their sleep, Naruto summoned and started sleep writing, similar to sleepwalking, in that odd notebook of his and wrote down things that could possibly put his Ika books to shame before putting it to the side to cuddle with Pam. Finally, he has embraced the ways. Sniffle sniffle, I am so proud. Jiraiya said to himself in joy as he pulled out a handkerchief to blow his nose in a comical fashion. If he was paying any attention to his surroundings, sometimes hard to tell with him being in heaven with no danger at all, he would have seen two people come from behind him with malicious intents aimed directly towards his way. Without him realizing what happened next, he was then kicked from the side and tumbled several dozen feet to the side. Hey! Who the fuck was Inter EEP? Jiraiya screeched out, seeing the people hovering over him with auras that could possibly kill him again. The first person was a woman that had a slender but feminine build, fair skin, royal purple eyes and waist-length red hair with shoulder-length strands framing her face. She wore a high-collared, sleeveless white blouse underneath a light gray dress with traditional wooden sandals with a halo over her head. The second person was a woman with brown eyes and straight, shoulder-length straw blonde hair that was kept in two loose ponytails underneath her glowing halo. She had a violet diamond mark on her forehead along with a figure that most women would kill for. She was wearing a light gray, kimono-style sleeveless blouse that was closed quite low, revealing her sizable assets underneath a white haori along with a dark gray obi matching her pants. She also wore a pair of open-toed, strappy black sandals with high heels. These two individuals were Kushina Uzumaki and Tsunade Senju, Naruto's mother and godmother respectively, and they looked absolutely pissed. What the hell do you think you were doing? Tsunade said as she glared at her former teammate. I was just checking up on our godson Tsunade. I didn't know they were going to end up like that, I swear. Jiraiya frantically said as he was sweating bullets. A very unlikely story, you old toad. Kushina said with her arms crossed. But I'm telling the truth, you two. You've got to believe me. He said as he scrambled away, but the two women were walking towards him with the malicious intents growing a bit with each step. He tried to get back up before Tsunade stomped her foot onto his back. Now listen here, Jiraiya, and listen good. We had tolerated you for years with your perverted antics. She said as she was digging her heel into his upper back where his ribs met his spine. But when you influence our precious boy with said antics, then that's where we draw the line. The redhead said while cracking her knuckles, and her hair was starting to float in the air and resembled a multitude of fox tails. And now girls. Let's talk this. The toad sage tried to say to them before he felt more pain on his back. Oh, we are talking and you have a lot to answer for, Tsunade said to the man as the two women drew closer to him. No. 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 Not the face. Anything but the face. Oh really? Gah. Yes, the face. Go back to the face. You know, I wonder what this halo could do. Gah. Stop choking me, you crazy dash. If we kill him, where does he go? Super heaven? Maybe, let's find out. Off to the side, a man was rubbing his face while shaking his head to the side, seeing this antic happen like in the good old days. He had bright blue eyes and sunny blonde hair that was very spiky and wild on the top, with jaw-length bangs framing his face. He had a decent build while wearing gray sweatpants, a white shirt and wooden sandals. This was Minato Namake's, and he was the Silverette father. Seems that this is going to happen all over again, he said to himself before looking to the scene being shown, and couldn't help but smile. I'm glad you found someone to love, Naruto. I hope you end up happy with her, my son. He kept looking at this for a few moments before waving his hand in front of it to try and disperse it. Okay. So how do I get rid of this? An hour later. After having their morning romp on the bed, which soon ended up in the shower, the two were soon dressed in a pair of fresh clothing, eating their reheated meals. Having their Christmas morning was going pleasantly well. As they were having their breakfast, they had heard from the news playing on the television of last night's events. The Joker had indeed broken out of Arkham Asylum yesterday and had terrorized Gotham through the airwaves. Prior to those events, he had kidnapped Commissioner Gordon, Detective Bullock of the GCPD, and the news reporter/anchor of Gotham Media, Summer Gleason, to have his own family for the holidays. The crazed clown wanted the dynamic duo of Gotham to stop him before midnight, or many lives would be lost. During the search for the Joker, they had to stop a train from going off a destroyed bridge and stop a few bombs located on several places in the city. In the end, the two heroes had found Joker's hideout and saved the day. Well, that's one way to somewhat make the morning not all that great, Pam said as she was washing the dishes alongside Naruto. I know, but I do wonder what I could do to make it better, the publisher said to his botanist girlfriend as he kissed her cheek. She giggled as she playfully pushed him away when he accidentally splashed some soapy water on her. And what would that be? Presents, of course, Naruto said with a smile as they finished up cleaning the rest of the dishes and put them into the dishwasher. Once drying themselves off, they made their way to the plastic Christmas tree Naruto had in the living room. It was small in size, with very little ornaments on it, with several presents lying underneath it. Naruto didn't like the idea of people cutting down trees just to decorate them every December and then afterwards just getting rid of them, so he had gotten a plastic one to not follow that trend. Pam liked knowing on his thoughts since she was in the same boat as she grew older. Things were pretty simple on the gift exchange, from each receiving books and clothing, but seemed to change a little towards the end. Seems that there are no more gifts, the botanist said as she was on her hands and knees looking for any additional presents for them to open. Not exactly, Naruto said as he pulled an object out of his pants pocket. When Pam backed to see what he meant, she saw a small little box in his hand and her mind just seemed to stop. Is he gonna? Is he proposing? She yelled out in her head. But we just got together weeks ago and had sex the first time last night. This is going a bit too fast. Naruto saw her reaction when he pulled out the box and couldn't help but laugh a little. It's not what you think, Pam. Geez, you think I plan on proposing after what we did last night? He said as he shook his head. This statement knocked her out of her storm of thoughts and made her seem surprised on the assumption. Pam soon grabbed the box out of his hand and hesitantly opened it to possibly assume it was a pair of earrings or a necklace he had gotten from a jewelry store. What she didn't expect was a key? Seeing her confused look, he soon answered her running thoughts. From what I told you last night, Pam, you planted yourself in my heart and took residence there. I soon started thinking if not just my heart would be good enough to live in, so he drawled out, making Pam realize what he meant. "You want me to live here?" she said, eyeing the key in her hand. A copy of the key to Naruto's loft. Well, if you want. You don't actually have to move in with me since you're still under contract at your current residence. I wanted to give you the key so you could come and stay over whenever you want," he said as he was rubbing the back of his head while looking away from her, trying to think of what else to say. That last bit was odd for him to say, but hope she got the idea. She didn't say anything and tightly hugged him for the present, giving Naruto the message that she likes the gift. He was putting a lot of trust towards her and wanted to go into another step into their relationship. The moment was soon broken as a phone was going off. Both checked their cellular phones and saw that it was Pam's, that she was receiving a call. "I'll probably need to take this," she said with a smile as she kept on fingering the key in her hand. She opened up her phone and turned to the side to answer it. "Hello, Dr. Isley here. What happened to the Hollands?" When hearing this, Naruto turned towards Pam with wanting to hear what is going on. Are you serious?" she said in worry, making Naruto put a hand on her shoulder, which she had her free hand go to and took a gentle squeeze with. I understand. I'll head down as soon as I can. Thank you," Pam said as she hung up the phone. "Pam. What's wrong?" he said in worry, since what her reactions were in that phone call shook her up badly. "That was friend of Alec and Linda Holland. He's a lawyer that worked with them and called me that something happened with them a few days ago," she said to him before she explained on what the lawyer friend told her. A family member came on by to the Hollands for the holidays last night when they found their residence destroyed in a fire. When police came onto the scene to inspect the place, they said that the fire happened a few days ago. They found Linda's body but not Alec's, and with what evidence they could salvage showed that a struggle occurred with Alec being taken for his research or worse. The lawyer friend told Pam that she'll need to come to Louisiana to hear the last will and testament of the Hollands since her name was in their request. "I'm more than willing to help pay for your trip, Pam, and I won't take no for an answer," the publisher said to her as she complied in his request. He cared for her very much, that he will do whatever he can to help her in these troubling times. Seems that the rest of their day would be a somber one as the two made it over to Pam's apartment to get things packed for the flight. Since things were going on last minute, Naruto called the airport and paid for her ticket over there, with her coming back later in the week. From what additional details Pam told him is that the reading of the will and testament will be taking place sometime after she arrives in Louisiana, and that she will want to pay her respects to the deceased Hollands. She even called her supervisor at Star Labs, one Dr. Jason Woodrue, to let her know on what happened, and he seemed fine with her going to Louisiana and paying her respects. But from what Pam told him after the phone call, that Woodrue seemed odd when she spoke to him but didn't know why. "I don't trust that guy, Pam," Naruto brought up as they were on their way to the airport. "Something about that supervisor of yours seems off to me." "He's my supervisor, Naruto, and he seems off to everyone due to his eccentric personality," she said to him with a shrug. "Besides, he's pretty lenient on me with my serum I'm developing. I know from what you told me about him, but just meeting him that one time just made me ticked off about him," the publisher said as he tightened his grip on the steering wheel, to which Pam noticed, but chose not to say anything as they got closer to the airport. They soon came to a stop at the drop-off point, and they got out of the car with the Silverette grabbing her luggage from the trunk. "Well, Pam, hope the trip goes well with the funeral and the will reading," the Silverette said as he hugged her and gave her a quick kiss. "Same," the botanist said with a sigh. "They were good friends of mine, and it's really unfortunate on how their lives ended in such a way. I hope they catch whoever had done this and bring them to justice for what they did." "I hope so too, but for now I just need to focus on the now and not the later. Still though, I wish this can get resolved," Naruto said as he looked at her downtrodden face. "Maybe when you get back, we can go to that one restaurant you like very much. Hopefully that could cheer you up a little." "Maybe, we'll have to see how things go, dear," Pam replied as she kissed him on the lips. "Well, I gotta get going. I'll call you on how things are proceeding over there. Alright Pam, have a good flight. He said as she nodded and headed off to catch her flight. With it being Christmas Day, that the airport will not that much of a problem with their security checks, so she'll be able to go on through and reach her gate in no time. Sighed, great, now what the hell am I supposed to do for the rest of the day? The publisher said in frustration. I was hoping that I could have spent the whole day with Pam, and this turned up. Once in his car and drove off, he kept on muttering to himself. Not that I'm complaining on the Hollands dying with it being really bad, but I wish that couldn't happen at all. Sigh, I just don't know what to do now. A bit into the drive, an idea soon popped into his head as he remembered Kurama's gift to him earlier that day. Maybe I can use this chance to break in that new gift of mine. Later, in a random alley. Currently in his stealth suit, which was a pain in the ass to get into with it being tight and all in some places, Naruto was looking through his helmet into the little instruction manual he found in his utility belt on what the capabilities of the suit were. Given the details of the specs, the group of people who designed the suit for Kurama referred the suit to be psychoanalytic cardiac dampening sneaking equipment. There is supposed to be a built-in medical system that dispenses some stimulation and medical packs, but there is a low amount of the product, so he'll need to use them sparingly if possible. Gotta say, I like the suit so far from what I'm reading, but does it have to ride up the crotch when I was getting over here? Naruto muttered as he had to pull down part of his pants to give his privates some breathing room. I swear Kurama did it on purpose just to spite me on the whole bunny ear bit. Unknown to the Uzumaki and at another location, Kurama stopped working on paperwork and smiled a little for some reason before getting back to his blasted workload to finish things up for the Christmas evening. Well, might as well get things started, he said as he focused an object into his hand and a grappling hook formed. It was pretty standard, with nothing special about it. The disguised publisher twirled the hook in a fast action and threw it up in hopes of it latching onto the edge of the rooftop. But it fell down and it hit him hard on the helmet, causing a sound to vibrate in the helmet. Okay, the sound is gonna be annoying. This kept on happening a few more times before the last one finally made its mark. The costumed man tugged on the grappling hook a few times to see if it was secured before scaling the wall. Wish I still had my chakra so I can walk on the walls without this, he said as he kept on walking. Maybe I should have tried to see if I could walk on walls with this power of mine before breaking the suit in. Kept on walking a bit more as his arms were getting a little tired. Should have imagined a grappling gun of sorts, but don't know how the stuff functions and operates, he said with a sigh before making it to the rooftop. After stretching his arms a little, he summoned his notebook and wrote in it. Note to self, look up grappling gun schematics and learn how to walk on walls, again. With that said, he willed the notebook away and looked over the city's landscape. Don't know right now if it's just me, but think the smoke and light pollution is making the sky look red at night. He kept on looking around and couldn't help but voice his thoughts. Makes it seem creepy. Looking around, he saw he was moderately high up with various buildings having gaps in between each other. Having the idea to jump between each of them, he decided to go for a run. Not really caring on his destination for the night, he went on a sprint and jumped quite a distance. When he got to the other rooftop, he barely made the landing but had to roll before making the recovery to keep his pace. This went on for a while with him making various movements in hopes of stretching the suit a bit more and for him to be used to it. There were some instances he had to stop running to adjust his crotch area to the point he pulled out his notebook for another reminder to get in jockstrap so it won't ride up his crotch again. Other times he ended up missing his jumps and had to catch the fire escapes so he won't fall onto the pavement below despite him knowing his defensive abilities will activate. Eventually he made it to some of the higher buildings and focused on his hands to have claws of sorts so he could maybe scale said buildings. Taking a few deep breaths, he sprinted towards the edge of the current rooftop before taking a leap of faith in hopes of making it to the wall just in time. As he was about to hit the wall, one thought came to mind, this is gonna hurt. And hurt it did as he slammed against the building's wall hard and started to skid. Throwing his arms hard against the concrete so that his hands can latch against anything. After a few seconds of his claws leaving marks on the wall, he came to a stop. Phew. Naruto moaned out as his arms and chest were growing in pain from the prior moments before taking his time to climb up the building's exterior. As he was getting higher and higher, his pain was slowly leaving him with odd tingles as usual. Once reaching the top, he gazed upon the city below as it was gaining more snow for the Christmas evening. "Gotta admit, it looks really good up here," he said to himself as some nostalgia started to come rushing in. Seeing the current view reminded the Uzumaki when he came back to Konoha from his training trip with Jiraiya. The view was somewhat similar in a way, minus the fact that there is no mountain nearby with carved faces on it. "I think I might be done for the evening. Should probably try out one more thing to wrap things up before heading back to the loft." The publisher looked around for a decent target for a little bit that could pique his interests when he eventually found one, the Gotham City Clock Tower. Built over 150 years ago by Bruce Wayne's great-grandfather, it has been a site for a lot of intrigue and supposed mysteries. Hell, there was even one story that started out back in the 1930s when the late mobster, Frankie Scalaxi, had stolen and supposedly hidden the famous cat's eyes emeralds somewhere inside of the clock tower. People had searched every nook and cranny for the pair of emeralds and came out empty-handed. From what he heard from one of his writers was that supposedly any thief that originates from Gotham always attempts to search for the jewels at some point in their careers. Even though he isn't a thief, he used to be a shinobi, and technically they have done missions in the past to search and steal valuable information and items of interest. So, he might as well do this sort of thing now than later. Walking back to the far end of the rooftop, he gave himself enough space for a running start before he takes his jump towards the clock tower. It's quite a distance away, and he doesn't know if he'll cause too much of a commotion if he fails to reach it. "Well, here goes nothing," he said as he took off. The masked publisher started to pick up speed as he reached the end of the rooftop, and he took a large leap once his foot left the very edge of the building. As he was in the air, he reached for his grappling hook he had to the side. When he remembered, he had left it behind several buildings away. "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh she-fight!" He yelled out loud, which some people heard down below, but didn't know where it originated. Naruto was comedically clawing through the air in hopes of slowing his descent, but was failing to do so. I need something. Anything right now," he yelled out as he tried to think of something until his arm shot out and some cloth formed from his suit. It went straight towards the clock tower and wrapped around one of its hanging gargoyles before Naruto swung around the building. "Holy shit! This is freaking awesome!" Naruto called out before seeing the upcoming wall. "Crap!" Meanwhile, some distance away. "Well, that seems interesting," a woman said while perched on a ledge. A newbie trying out his or her luck for the first time. If one was nearby, they would see that her attire appeared to be a leather suit with some armor sewn into the fabric at various places. The suit showed the woman's figure very nicely in all the right places while heightening other areas with a circular zipper located straight down the middle. She wore high-heeled combat boots, sharp gloves, a leather collar and whip, along with a mask that appeared to look like a cat's head with red goggles to finish off the look. The woman in question is the thief, Catwoman aka Selina Kyle. Reason why she is here was that while other people throughout the city are celebrating Christmas, many residences of the wealthy would be up for grabs for any thief daring to do their job for the evening. So far, Selina had been able to break into several places so far and nabbed a good handful of valuables for her own agendas. She was going to call it a night when she caught sight of someone running across the rooftops in some stealth suit of sorts before making a jump to a building nearby and made her way up. What surprised the cat-themed thief was when the person jumped off of the high-rise building and somehow gotten a rope or a grappling line to attach to the Gotham clock tower so far away and swung to its position. Wonder what you're up to," Catwoman said to no one in particular. She then felt movement around her neck as a black cat uncurled itself and yawned as it woke up. "Enjoy your little cat nap, Isis?" she said as she scratched her cat in the right places, making the cat to purr in confirmation. "Well, I think you should hang on tight, my dear," the thief told her pet, who gained a curious expression. "We are gonna head over to the clock tower before heading home for the night." Something seems to pique my curiosity and I intend to find out more. Inside of the clock tower. Thank Kami above I phased through the wall or else that would have been really painful. Naruto said as he rubbed his helmet in hopes of rubbing his actual head. Wouldn't work, but force of habit. The sounds of the many clock parts operating filled the air as Naruto got up from the walkway and looked through the mechanism of the tower. He then looked at his arms where the cloth came from and saw the remnants from one part that was torn. It appeared to look like a scarf that transitioned from black to white with the end looking like part of the symbol he kept seeing from his powers. He looked away from the material as it faded so he can focus on his task at hand. Well, if I want to have a better job breaking this suit, and I better have some fun, and what better chance than from a place that is constantly in motion? He said to no one in particular. Naruto soon climbed up the steel ladder to get to the upper level before jumping onto one of the clockwork gears and climbed onto the next one. The process on getting towards the top of the clock tower from the inside took a little trial and error. Getting knocked over and almost getting hit a few times by the many parts made him slow down or be extra careful on the climb. He did have to think things carefully and see the patterns to get the timings right so he could make the jumps easier for him. As he was progressing, Catwoman was watching him closely to see what he is up to. Once making to the top, where the main bell is at, he took a view of the entire city from where he is standing and enjoyed the view even more. Naruto took it in for a few more moments before turning back to the main contraption below. Well, here goes nothing. With that, Naruto jumped down onto the first gear several feet below him as he rolled shortly after onto the next one. He soon fell off and didn't do a thing, causing Catwoman to catch her breath a little and anticipated on what he was gonna do next. After falling for several dozen feet, he willed his arm to make that scarf from earlier to latch onto one of the pillars off to the side before it retracted to pull him up. Not wanting to lose momentum, Naruto had his scarf let go to send him flying a little into the air as he latched onto one of the gears up above. During the time of Naruto having his go around of the mechanism, Selena was enjoying the show of the masked individual performing all kinds of tricks all over. Her breath was caught several times when he didn't stick some landings or grab just in time but had recovered quickly to save his own hide by using that cloth of his to latch onto any nearby pillars or gears. She was very drawn into his performance that she kept on leaning forward from her position. Maybe I don't need to look up grappling guns after all. He said, referring to his new scarf he has. The masked publisher kept on swinging a bit until dawn. The clock tower chimed its bell, causing the interior to vibrate and its loud noise vibrate the air. Dawn. With the sudden happening of the new hour, caused Catwoman to fall off her ledge and had to latch onto something quickly for her own safety. Dawn. That wouldn't be the same with her black cat, Isis, as the sudden movement of her master falling down caused her to lose her grip. Dawn. Isis. Catwoman yelled out in fear for her cat's safety. Dawn. Naruto thought he heard someone call out a name and some screeching sound, making him look down to see a cat falling to its doom. Dawn. The Uzumaki willed his scarf to let go so he can plummet down to reach the cat. Dawn. Naruto had the scarf shoot out to snag the little creature in hopes of saving its life. Dawn. As each brief moment passed, Selena felt her heart stop seeing her beloved Isis plummet to her death and the stranger trying to save her. Dawn. The scarf reached its target and retracted, quickly getting Naruto to hold onto it for its safety as they reached towards the bottom. Dawn. The thief couldn't bear it any longer as she closed her eyes, not wanting to see the coming deaths of the two. Dawn. At the last chime of the clock tower's bell, the feline-themed thief slowly opened her eyes to see the gruesome display below, to only see nothing at all. What? She said in shock. Where are they? She climbed on down from her placement and kept on looking around for any sign of them. All of a sudden, she saw the masked stranger. Walked out of the giant, rotating gears on a few levels above the ground level. Simply walked out like they weren't even there. It surprised her that she unconsciously moved behind one of the support pillars to hide herself. Man! I'm glad I had that phasing ability of mine, or else things would have gone bad for us," he said as he slowly opened his arms to show the shaken black cat. There, little one. It's all right." He petted Isis as slow as he can in hopes of calming her down. "The bell won't hurt you now." After a minute of petting Isis, she eventually calmed down and kissed him for saving her life. "Good to know you finally relaxed now," he said before tilting his head in confusion. "I do wonder though, why are you here? You're clearly not a stray because of the collar, and I think I heard someone call out your name." Catwoman wanted to go out there and thank the man for saving her precious cat, but a part of her didn't trust him at the current moment. "Well, it doesn't matter. As long as you are safe, then I wouldn't worry about anything else, little one." Seeing the cat's look, he assumed he didn't know the name. "Sorry if I don't know your name, little one, but the ringing of the bell might have blocked out your name being called out, so I hope you don't mind." Isis shook her head, making him smile underneath the helmet before he decided to walk off with her still in his arms. "I'm gonna take us to the ground floor so that you can be really safe. I recommend you not going into high places for a while, you hear?" he said in a childish, strict tone, making the cat nod. He slowly climbed down the few ladders before reaching the ground floor with the entrance of the tower nearby. Once outside, he slowly lowered himself to the ground, getting Isis to crawl out and walk onto the ground. "Well, I hope you have a good Christmas, little one," he said as he reached to his utility belt and pulled out some pet treats to feed the black cat. "Don't know why that fur ball had these in here, but right now I'm not complaining." Once she was done eating, the masked man went on his way before Selena came out of her hiding spot and ran towards Isis and kept on kissing and petting her like no tomorrow. During the process, she felt something on the collar and pulled away, seeing a note. When pulling it out, she heard something fall onto the ground. When looking at the source, she saw 2 emeralds. Not just any emeralds, the cat's eyes emeralds. How did they get there? Selena said in shock, before remembering of the note in her hand. Once opening it up, she read its contents. "Hello, little one's owner. Lovely night, isn't it? You might be wondering on how I knew you were nearby. Well, for one, you calling out your cat's name, but like I told her, I couldn't tell what name was called out. The second was an ability of mine to tell of certain presences nearby. Learning how to properly use it better as of late, but could tell you were in the clock tower for brief moments, so it was rocky at best. Anyways, I don't know if you were tracking down your cat, if she escaped from your clutches or not, but I'm not prying. I hope you have a pleasant Christmas and a happy New Year. Sincerely yours, a simple nobody. P.S. Hope you like the present, didn't expect finding those tonight, but hope you put them to good use, little one's owner." When inspecting the note more, she saw a peculiar symbol in the background. But that didn't matter, she had gotten her hands on one of the best presents she could ever get. Now she'll be putting these emeralds along with her other valuables she got this evening towards the betterment of animal kind. Selena looked around the area in hopes of finding this nobody and give her his thanks, but she couldn't find him at all. "Wherever you are, nobody. Thank you." Chapter 6, A Rose Has Been Planted. "What's taking the flight so long?" Naruto said as he kept on looking at his watch. "It should have been here by now." The publisher was currently at the airport terminal gate waiting for Pam to get back from Louisiana. From what he knew from talking to one of the airport workers, that the flight took off late due to a storm down south, but it wasn't causing any problems at all for the rest of the way. But this wasn't settling Naruto's nerves all that well on his patience of seeing Pam with how urgent her last phone call was. The botanist had gotten something big from the Hollands in their will, but didn't want to say what she had gotten over the phone and would rather say it in person. Aside from that, she had told him how things had turned out, from the funeral service to meeting the Hollands' friends and family. For the rest of the trip she had visited a few places the Hollands wanted her to see that she never got the chance to before. Naruto was honestly glad that she was trying to enjoy herself despite the loss of 2 close friends, and she was doing her best to keep herself up. "I think that's it. the Uzumaki noticed a plane coming down the runway and heading towards the designated gate. It took roughly 10 minutes or so for Pam to get out of the plane, and he greeted her with a few kisses which she returned gleefully. "So how were things while I was gone?" she asked as they were making their way to the parking garage. "Things were pretty quiet while you were gone. Work has been steady given the post-holiday time and not much has occurred." "And for you?" "Well, I've been keeping myself preoccupied on my free time." Naruto said they kept on walking to their destination. After that Christmas night with the Gotham Clock Tower, the publisher had been working on his current skill set a bit more but had mostly focused on his physical assets. With some of those incidents with the climbing, the hanging and swinging made him realize that while he is still physically fit and both reflexes and agility were still fine and dandy, his body grew unaccustomed to that extreme sort of exercises for a long time. So, he had to start working out again to be reaccustomed to his old strengths so his muscles wouldn't be sore when he did all that again. He got himself a salmon ladder and had it placed in his loft so he could possibly help fix some of those mentioned problems, but still needed to get things taken care of with the real deal. In the past several nights, he had to do the same thing he did that Christmas night of climbing up buildings and swing around with that scarf of his. He did try to work on his wall walking with his void powers, but it seems that his powers were not capable of doing such a thing, especially with him failing miserably several times when doing it in his loft. Naruto also had tinkered around with that onboard computer he had in his helmet to figure out how all that worked since he outright ignored it the first night he wore it and wished he hadn't. It helped him out a bit when getting some of the timings right when trying to latch onto certain things without his scarf. He didn't want to grow too accustomed to his grappling scarf just in case if he ended up reaching his limits and his powers not functioning properly. The two were driving back to Pam's apartment for a while with her explaining some of the sites she went to like the French Quarter, the old state capital, and the Melrose, Laura, and Rosedown Plantation and Gardens. "With how you're describing them makes me want to go to these places myself," he said with a chuckle. "You definitely should," Pam said in a happy tone that made Naruto smile. "Maybe we could go there together sometime and I'll show you." "We'll see, Pam," the publisher replied before asking what was bugging him for a while. "So, been meaning to ask, but what did the Hollands give you? You were pretty insistent on telling me in person instead of on the phone." She paused for a bit to collect her thoughts as she fished for her laptop bag from the back seat. Naruto slowed down on the action since he didn't want to cause any problems for any of the drivers around them. Once Pam was properly situated back into her seat, she pulled out the item in question. "A compact disc?" The Hollands told me in a living will. Naruto gained a little confusion on that. Which was a video recording of them telling others of their wills. "Oh, I know what a living will is, Pam, just didn't expect one for you to go to." "Neither did I, but there were things the two wanted to tell family members and friends dearly that reading from a document wouldn't have much of an impact." Nodding at this, she continued. "Anyways, they told me I should have this as it contains all of their research notes and progress. They updated each day and kept it in their safe that survived the fire. So that means that they wanted me to combine their research with theirs to finish up the projects in full. I believe they must have been close to finishing when they were attacked," Pam said to finish his assumed thoughts. "But who would want to attack them? Do they even have any competition?" "None that I know of. Like I mentioned before, they tried to be as secretive as possible. But there could have been a leak and some companies could have seen them as a threat." "I agree. If they brought out their finished product, this would bring out a major boon that not only they would win the Nobel Peace Prize but would have more fame and profit in the end," Naruto said as he got them closer to her apartment. "In turn would drastically decline stocks of various companies that could possibly be harmed by their research," the botanist said to wrap things up. "That's what I thought as well during my time down south, but I don't know what else to do exactly. All I can do now is to use their research and finish up the serum so I can use it in their memory." "Well, I think that should be something to celebrate. I did promise to take you to your favorite restaurant when you got back." "Oh, I remember and I intend to cash that in," Pam said with a smirk. Great. For a moment there I thought you forgot. Naruto smiled back. We'll still stop by your place and freshen up before heading over there. The two eventually made it back to her apartment and unloaded her belongings. It didn't take long for them to get themselves cleaned up for their date for the evening. Pam couldn't help but giggle when she saw Naruto have a spare change of clothes with him for the night. He did explain a little that he couldn't wait for the little event as he wanted to make things great for her return back to Gotham. Naruto ended up wearing a dark, suited attire that seemed to highlight his features nicely that could make any woman want his attention. As for Pam, she was wearing a dress she got on her trip, being a black, strap dress that if light hits it in just the right angles one would see its green color blended into the fabric with very little makeup as always to highlight her features. Is something wrong, Naruto? Pam playfully asked, seeing her boyfriend's look. Though to be fair, she was gaining a similar look with how well he is dressed. I don't know if we should go on our date now. Oh. And why's that? Well, I don't want to have any other man gaze upon your beauty, Pam. You just look too beautiful for any other eyes to see you. This caused her to giggle in response. Oh, you flatterer. They soon went on their way to the restaurant, and Naruto was glad he had made a reservation that Christmas night after taking Pam to the airport. There was only one spot left for this evening and he took it right away. It's a pretty popular place for many of the white-collar individuals of Gotham, and the two had eaten there on a previous date, so they knew what to expect on how crowded it could be. Their expectations ended up correct when they arrived, with the parking area being full with a bit of a line in the front. Thank Kami that the place is bigger on the inside, or else it'll be hard to get in. Naruto muttered as he pulled up to the valet. Nice evening, isn't it, sir? The valet greeted them as he opened up the driver's door before opening the passenger one. So far so good, the Silverette said as he handed the man a tip. It's hard for some people these days to get a good wage. Thank you, sir, enjoy your stay, the man said as he went into the car and drove the vehicle to find suitable parking. The two went inside soon after so they can get checked in at the receptionist's desk. When they reached their destination, Naruto saw some familiar faces and couldn't help but voice his thought. Bruce? Harvey? What are you two doing here? Sedman turned around to find the source of the call, showing the couple the billionaire playboy of the Wayne family and Gotham's district attorney. The playboy's short black hair with cobalt blue eyes were highlighted a bit with his black suit he was wearing to help define his features, while the DA's combed black hair with light gray eyes were matching his dark gray suit. Next to the men were two blonde women. One was wearing a black dress that was probably Bruce's date, while the other wore a magenta dress that Naruto soon recognized as Harvey's fiancée, Grace Lamont. Oh, hey Naruto, good to see you. The billionaire greeted his publisher friend as he held out his hand for a handshake. Nice seeing you too. Haven't seen you since that gala last month, Naruto responded as he shook his friend's hand. Same here. Been quite busy these past weeks with the company, so I couldn't chat with you that much. All is forgiven, Wayne. Naruto then looked over to the other couple that was with Bruce and his date. Harvey, Grace. How are things going on for you two? We're doing great, Naruto, and I've been meaning to thank you for getting those autographed books from your new writers in your company, Grace said, getting her fiancé to nod. Definitely. Been reading what I can when I'm not working on various cases, and glad that you had published those works. They help keep my mind off of work at times when needed. Then I'm glad to be of help, District Attorney. When the conversations are going on, the other two women were seemingly left out of the conversation. I'm sorry. I should have introduced my date for the evening, Bruce said to Naruto. Naruto, this is Natasha. Natasha, this is Naruto Uzumaki of Spiral Publishing. Nice to meet you, Mr. Uzumaki, the woman said with hints of a Russian accent. I gotta say I enjoy reading your company's latest works. Well, thank you, Natasha, the publisher replied. Anyways, Bruce, Harvey, Grace, this is my girlfriend, Dr. Pamela Isley. Pam, this is Bruce Wayne of Wayne Industries. Yes, I know Naruto. You don't need to tell me, but it is nice to meet you, Mr. Wayne. And here I wanted to properly introduce you, he said with a pout which got the two women to laugh a little. I know, but wanted to tease you a little, the botanist replied back as he patted his cheek. And it's also nice to meet you too, Mr. and soon to be Mrs. Dent. Likewise, thanks, the engaged couple replied respectively. Don't mind me asking, but when did you two get together? The billionaire asked with the knowledge that they are in a relationship now. Since Christmas weekend. Well, congrats then, Bruce said before noticing their current placement. So, were you two going to check in? Yes, we were. Well, why don't you two join us? It'll be fun, and I think this place is too crowded as it is, Grace said, supposedly voicing her Bruce's oncoming response. I don't know. Would you be fine with that, Pam? Why not? I think it'll be a pleasant dinner either way. With that said, Bruce had asked the receptionist if it was possible to combine the two parties, which he was happy to oblige. He had ushered them to a table that had finished getting ready for the next set of customers. So, Bruce, are there any projects in the works that we could learn about, or are they going to be a surprise? Naruto asked as they were getting situated in their seats. There are a few, but yes, I'm not at liberty to speak of what they are. That's understandable, so I won't pry. I'll just wait for when you properly give out the announcements. But while on the topic of projects, what about you? Are you planning anything else to write? Grace politely asked. The publisher was going to answer, but the redhead had beaten him to the punch. He does have one book in the works. Pam, Naruto whined to her. Spoilers? Oh really? Bruce inquired. And how do you know of this, Pamela? She found what I had written so far in my notebook, Naruto said as he rubbed his head. It was just something I'd been doing in passing, and after reading it, she wanted me to finish it up. Well, given the reputation on how most of your previous works turned out to be, I wouldn't expect your next one to not be a bestseller. We'll see, Bruce. We'll see, the former shinobi stated. I think I'm halfway done now, and it'll be some time till I'm even close to being done. Really? Pam curiously asked. From what I had read so far, that you were practically 2 acts in from the prologue and you starting the first. Acts? Are you playwriting this book of yours? Natasha asked. Well, it's more of an epic poem, Natasha. I honestly never thought of having Loveless be transitioned into a play, but now that I think about it, it might seem like it. I don't know now, but I'll see on how it goes in the end, Naruto replied. Then how many acts do you think will there be in total? Questioned the DA. Naruto thought about it for a moment before replying. Well, Harvey, technically I'm currently writing the 3rd act with it written as the 2nd. I plan on having 6 acts in total with the prologue and 5 acts following. Then I guess it'll be an interesting read then. The party were soon greeted by their waiter for the evening, and they soon ordered their respective meals. There were some fun conversations going on various topics as they were going through their appetizers of varying salads, but soon things started to get interesting after they finished those up. But how would one raise children in a city such as this? Natasha asked. Well, I was born and raised here in Gotham and I turned out okay, Bruce replied. Despite, well, you know, Naruto said as he knew talking about that specific night around Bruce is always touchy. The others understood on what Naruto meant, and the playboy nodded on his friend not actually saying it and going into that can of worms. Sometimes I do wonder, is Wayne Manor even in the city limits? Pam questioned. They are around the Palisades. Around the border, I believe, Naruto replied. I'm talking more about of how a city idolizes a masked vigilante. Hearing the Russian woman's correction, Naruto decided to explain a little. Well, from how things have gone in these past years, Gotham City could be proud of an ordinary citizen trying to do what is right. That I can agree with, replied the DA. Gotham needs heroes like you elected officials instead of someone who thinks is above the law. Natasha countered. So, with that, who appointed the Batman? Bruce commented. We did apparently, Harvey said. All of us who stood by and watched a variety of scum take over the city. But this is a democracy, Mr. Dent. When the enemy were at the gates, the Romans suspend democracy and appoint one man to help protect the city. The DA said. It wasn't considered just an honor, but it was a public service. From what I remember in my history classes, the last person the Roman Republic appointed was Julius Caesar, and he never gave up his power when things died down. Pam said her 2 cents. True. But here's the thing, you would either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. Harvey said as things started to sink in. From what I can tell, Batman doesn't want to do this all his life. Naruto said, getting the others' attention. I can imagine that years down the road, that if he keeps his mantle of responsibility on for too long, he'll grow very old and bitter towards the world and would never have any bright days to live by. Probably be held up in a cave and act like a hermit for all his life till he goes into the grave. He'll probably want someone to take up his cape and cowl for when the time comes that to finally pass the torch. Maybe to that Robin fellow that works alongside him. Natasha asked. Possibly. Who knows if the traffic light wants to take it up or not? All I'm saying is that if the city grows too dependent of Batman, then what would happen if he just up and left or disappeared, and then what? Naruto said, leaving that question in the air. Things will start toppling down, I guess. Grace answered. Pretty much. Naruto said with a shrug. Batman will end up creating a symbol or an icon that it'll be hard to live without, and that someone will need to keep it alive after the current Dark Knight retires or passes on, so that Gotham could possibly be safer down the road. That seems to be a very interesting assessment, Naruto. Didn't really think about that. Bruce replied as he started filing those details into memory. Same here, Harvey said in agreement. You really thought deeply into this sort of subject, haven't you? Probably, Naruto said with a shrug. But other than that, then you're welcome. Of course, it wasn't really just a guess. Naruto had known on how similar it was between Batman and the Kages from his home reality. Someone that was truly strong when the shinobi villages of respective areas were formed, that each of them needed a leader, an icon to help keep the peace and stabilize things throughout the other places of the world. At some point, the current Kage would need to step down so the next generation could take her place, then the new one would need to be properly trained. The Uzumaki had to obviously know of this back then for his former dream, and even now with current events. With that said, if Robin doesn't want to take up the Bat's mantle, then who? Would it be you, Mr. Dent? Natasha asked. Maybe, if I'm up for it, the DA said with a chuckle. What if Mr. Dent is the Caped Crusader? The Russian replied as she put her napkin in front of Harvey's face to only show the bottom portion of it. This got a laugh out of the man before he responded back. If I were sneaking out every night, then someone would have caught me in the act. Oh, I definitely would have, Grace said with a giggle as she kissed her fiancé on the lips. You know, Harvey, isn't the DA re-election going to be happening soon? The publisher asked. Yes, in a few months or so. Why, you ask? Harvey curiously asked. Well, I would like to help fund or at least contribute to your campaign when the time comes, Naruto said, getting several people on the table to look at Naruto in surprise. You would really want to do that, Naruto? Bruce asked. I mean, it's just that I have helped fund Harvey's campaigns in the past and things have turned up well so far. I know that, Bruce, but I just want to at least donate a substantial amount when the process begins. I just want to show that I support you, Harvey, and not just voting for you since I started living here in Gotham. Chuckles, then I'll be glad to accept your generosity, Naruto. Anything I can get will help keep the city on the right track despite the mob and other forms of crime running around. I hope you will, Harvey. I hope you will. With that, their meals soon came and the group had shifted conversations to a lighter tone so things can end pleasantly for them. As time has passed for the group with them satisfied in their meals as they were heading off to their respective destinations. Harvey and Grace left a bit earlier due to them having meetings in the morning and they needed to get back home early. You know, Naruto, you should maybe come with me to this animal rights event going on next week. Bruce suggested. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the one dealing with Gotham's finest being auctioned off for dates with all of the proceeds going towards the animals? That it is. I don't know about that, Bruce. I'm currently in a relationship and I don't know if Pam would be fine with me attending or yet participating in it. Participating in what exactly? Pam asked as she came up from behind the two. Oh, Pam. Naruto said with a stutter. Well, Bruce was asking if I could come with him to this event next week. And what event is that? An animal rights event and the proceeds go towards the animals. Okay, but why would you think I wouldn't be fine with it? Well, it's a celebrity date auction. Oh. She drawled out in acknowledgement. And I was telling Bruce that I wouldn't know if it would be good for me to attend or yet participating in it. And I think you should go. See, Bruce, I told you she wouldn't. Wait, what? Naruto said in surprise, and even Bruce shared the same reaction. Well, if it was being used for a good cause, especially with it being the wildlife, then I think it'll be good for you to go. But wouldn't you be mad if I went out with someone on the event? Not at all. Naruto's eyes soon narrowed as he stared at his botanist girlfriend from her response. This got her to be confused on his little action there. What? This is a test, isn't it? A what? A test in our relationship. You are suggesting me to go and to see if I will actually want to attend or participate in the event. Either result would affect our relationship in a positive or negative way. This got Pam and Bruce to adopt confused looks on Naruto's response. Soon the botanist realized what he was implying and decided to voice her thoughts. What? No, Naruto. This isn't a test in our relationship at all. I really do want you to go. You know how I feel about nature and the wildlife is a part of it. So, if you going helps on the event then you should definitely go. But what about you? Well, maybe I could come or not. It pretty much depends if work is going to be crazy with the new year. She said with a shrug. But in all honesty, Naruto, if I can be able to come with or not, you should definitely go and I will not take no for an answer. Sigh, alright, if you say so. Besides, I think it would be fun to see how much women would end up bidding on you if you actually participated. Of course. Bruce couldn't help but chuckle on the interaction and decided it was time for him to head off as Natasha came back from using the restroom. Then I'll be seeing you next week, Naruto. And I hope you have a good New Year's, you too. See you then, Bruce, and a Happy New Year to you as well. With that said, Naruto and Pam went on their way to head back to Pam's apartment to head off to bed. From the mixture of Pam's flight and their meal, she was wanting to spend her New Year's just relaxing and celebrating it in their own way. A few days later, Pam's POV. I wish I wasn't here right now. I would rather be at home with Naruto helping me relax. I said to no one in particular with a sigh escaping my lips. For the past few days now, I've been working non-stop on my serum after I got back to work. I thought at first, I was going to take a bit of time to figure out how to properly get Holland's serum to mix with my own, which I thought was impossible. But sometime after I clocked in, I was approached by one of my supervisors, Dr. Jason Woodrue, that I needed to get my serum finished very soon or else I will be forced to put it on indefinite hiatus. There was no explanation at all and he left me to do my things, making me wonder if what he said was true and I would be forced to no longer work on the goal of the Hollands and my own. So by that I was forcing myself to stay at Star Labs for the past several days, working day in and day out to get everything wrapped up. During one of my meal breaks, I had called up Naruto and told him the news on what I had to do. He told me it was unfair on what Woodrue was making me do, that reaching my life's goal was in her reach, but if it wasn't done soon then I would kiss it goodbye. I agreed with his statement, but I had no choice at all. "Oh Naruto, you are so damn sweet to me," I thought as I gazed upon the various flowers he brought me these past few days to help cheer me up. Of course, the gaze would have been better if some of the meal boxes I had cleanly eaten weren't near my precious flowers. With how stressful this wrap-up turned out to be, I had to shove a lot of my things to a corner so they wouldn't be near any of my sensitive equipment. I can't wait for this to be done so I can finally clean up my lab and finally clean myself up properly, I said as I gazed over to the mirror nearby, seeing my disheveled look of frizzled hair that was tied up by a headband and a scrunchie. If one could describe the current condition of my lab, well, it would literally be a mix of rotted nature taking over with a hurricane had passed on by. Many small experiments and attempts on blending the two serums together were unsuccessful, as things seemed to look fine at first as things started to grow, only for them to die moments later. What the hell is wrong with this picture? I have the understanding perfectly, as every attempt of getting the serums to blend well turned out for naught. Is there something that I'm not getting in all of this, or was this some sick game from a higher power wanting to screw me over? Oh mother, what should I do? Knock knock. May I come in? A man called out from outside of my lab. It's open. The person who stepped through the doorway was not only my supervisor, but also the man that I would really want to kill right now for causing me this annoyance of finishing up my project. Dr. Jason Woodrue was a man in his late 40s, early 50s, with his dark hair combed back with two white streaks going off on either side. He was wearing a standard lab coat with some business wear underneath. He also wore an interesting pair of glasses that had several attachments of a magnifying variety to help him see closely if needed. So, Dr. Isley, how's the project coming along? It's doing all right, sir. I'm just having trouble trying to get some kinks to properly work. Well, I know you'll be able to do fine finishing this up by tonight, he said, making me to widen my eyes in surprise. Tonight? I have till tonight to finish this? Why, yes you do. You've spent quite a long time working on this project of yours, but I'm afraid your time is just about up, Woodrue said with a smile that made me feel uncomfortable at the moment due to me working overtime with little to no rest. Like I told you before, that if you have not completed your serum by the deadline, then I'm afraid you'll be putting this on indefinite hiatus. But I thought I had another day or two, but not tonight, I said as I was starting to well up tears in frustration and exhaustion. Well, I just wanted to let you know. I'll be stopping on by later this evening to see if you'll be done by then. And with that he left my lab for me to wallow in my misery. Why does this have to happen to me? I cried out as I slumped onto the floor and just wanted to die now so I won't have to deal with this. Alec, Linda, what am I doing wrong? Is there something that I'm not getting at all from your work? The green. Wait. The green. The green. I said as the slight thought came and went through my head as slight memories came back to me before I widened my eyes in shock. The green was something the Hollands had said in passing in previous times I had visited them. They mentioned that it was something really important in their research to help make their serum to truly work, but I didn't think it wasn't all that important. Oh good fucking god, why did I forget that? I yelled out in my head as I scrambled from the floor and ran towards my laptop. I went through the disk the Hollands gave me and eventually found the file that was hidden away deeply into other files. Before I knew it, I finally found the information I was looking for. As information started piling through my screen, I couldn't help but smile hard to the point that my cheeks could have ripped from how happy I had gotten. This was it. This was fucking it. I finally found my solution. With new invigoration with little to no exhaustion, I dived into my work as I started plowing through it like a snowplower on a snow day to ruin a child's day off from school, or Naruto giving it to me hardback on Christmas and New Year's. Yeah, odd analogies there. But fuck it, I don't care right now. It's time to complete this baby. Hours later. Finally, it's done. I said as I held up the vial of green liquid that seemed to sparkle and glow as I held it up to the white lights of my lab. I don't care if I'm seeing things due to my exhaustion. I am finally done. Alex and Linda's work, my work, they are finally done. Knock knock. You can come in. I called out to see Dr. Woodrue walking in. Hello, Dr. Isley. How's the project coming along? Oh, it's great, sir. I finally have it done now. I said in a giddy tone as my excited high kept me from noticing an odd look come to Woodrue's face. Really? Well, that's wonderful. He said in a tone that seemed a tad off to me. Well, I think you can finally call it a day, Dr. Isley, and head on home now. But shouldn't I clean up my lab and present my work to you before I go? It's all fine, Pamela. I've caused you enough stress that you can go on your merry way. You can clean up your lab and present your project in the morning. Thank you, sir. I'll see you later then. I said to him as he smiled at me before going on his merry way. As I started gathering my things, I had this odd tingle at the back of my neck that something seems off and that I should be worried. Nah, it's just the exhaustion getting to me. But still, this feeling isn't really going away. I was walking out of the botanical area of Star Labs as I made my way to my car. I saw that it was pretty dark outside with the moon and stars somewhat shining this evening. I can't wait to finally go to bed. It'll feel so damn good, especially when I take a nice hot shower in the morning. I said as I fished my keys out of my purse. Once I got into my car, I tried starting it up, but it wouldn't go. I kept doing this several times before I realized that my battery must have died. Great. I mumbled. Absolutely great. I soon fished out my cellular phone and started typing Naruto's phone number, and I really hope he was up. Ring 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 ring. Hello. Hey Naruto. Oh hey Pam. How's the project coming along? Great news. I finally have it done. I said in a slightly happy tone. Really? Congrats, Pam. I knew you can do it. I know, Naruto. So, I'm just wondering, but why are you calling me? I can tell that it's not just for the big news there. You got me there, honey. Look, I need a ride to either your place or mine. The battery of my car is probably dead, so I'm pretty much not going anywhere. Okay, Pam, I'll be heading your way right now. Give me about 10 to 15 minutes and I'll be there. Just head back inside and wait for me. Alright, Naruto, I'll see you then, and I can't wait. Me too, Pam. I've missed you. Same here. Oh, and Naruto? Yeah. I love you. I love you too. After that, I ended the phone call and made my way back inside of Star Labs. With how cold it is outside, there was no way in hell I was going to wait inside of my car with it being so damn chilling. Once I got inside, I decided to go use the restroom so I can properly wash my face and feel a little warm in the face. While on my way towards my destination, I heard something quite a distance away. I thought it was nothing until I heard some glass breaking and some yelling that got my curiosity getting the better of me. The fuck is it? Where the hell did she put it? Isn't that Woodrue's voice? I muttered to myself as I drew closer before I realized the commotion was in my lab. I soon peeked inside and saw what he was doing. He was rummaging my lab? Where in the bloody hell did that bitch put her work? He said as he soon tossed drawers from their originated place as it broke some nearby equipment and glass chemical containers. I wanted to go in there and question why he was messing up my lab, but I needed to wait for what his intentions are. Gah! The bitch must have taken it with her instead of leaving it here. Now my plans are ruined. He yelled out as he kept throwing chemicals all over the room in frustration. Was he talking about my serum and my notes? That must have been it, but why? I should have taken it from her before she left so I could have presented it to the board tomorrow. He said as he was biting his fingernails. Now I won't be having any of the credit and my shot in the Nobel Peace Prize will go down the drain. He was planning on stealing my work? Even after all that effort of hiring those goons down south to take care of the Hollands and possibly steal their work, but no, they had to fuck it all up. He yelled out as he kicked some objects that were on the ground. No, he was the one that caused that? He was the one that killed them? Oh, that was it. You! I yelled out from the doorway, getting his attention. How dare you? How dare you try to steal my life's work, you bastard? Ah, Dr. Isley. So nice for you to return. He said in a sweet voice, but I wasn't buying it. Don't you dare try to sweet talk out of this, you bastard. I yelled out. I heard you confess on what you have done. Oh, and what do you mean? He asked in delusion. You wanted to take my life's work and you took the lives of my closest friends. For what? Just to gain all the glory and profit from the finished work. Ah yes, that. And what do you have to say for yourself? He didn't say anything at all, trying to think of something, but my patience was wearing very thin. Listen here and listen good. I have spent my life's work wanting to protect the environment and for plant life to live on and not die out. My friends wanted to solve the problem on food shortages and would have saved countless lives in the process. And now, here you want to steal our hard work that we have literally cried, sweat and bleed for. When I get through with you, you won't even be able to get a job as a high school chemistry teacher. Do you hear me? You psychotic bastard. With my bit said and done, I awaited for his answer. Well, I respect your opinion. He said to me. And quite frankly, I'm not all that great with rejection. When Woodrue said that, I felt something heavy go down to my stomach. So, I'm afraid you'll have to die. He lunged at me as a fight broke out between us. I fell onto the ground and felt the broken glass cut into my skin, but I couldn't let him get the better of me. I pushed him away as he hit hard against the counter before trying to attempt harm me again. I ducked away as he ended up pushing a stand full of chemicals onto the ground, and some splashed against some wall sockets and broken machinery, causing some sparks to light up. I tried to run out of the lab that was starting to catch on fire, but he grabbed my hair and slammed my head hard against one of the counters, cutting my head open slightly. My adrenaline kept me awake as I had to take care of the psychotic supervisor. I soon found a broken flask and I didn't care if it broke through my skin in my hand as I lunged towards him to either immobilize him or even kill him. He tried to move away, but some of the chemicals on the ground made him slip towards me. I took the chance and I stabbed the broken flask into his throat and left a deep gash. Why oh you bye bitch! Woodrue yelled despite his throat slashed open as he attempted to kill me while his life was slowly leaving him. He ended up pushing me against my bookcase full of chemicals to fall upon me. I tried to push the bookcase off of me as I saw Woodrue try to leave, but he once again slipped and fell to the side, slamming his head to hit against the counter, knocking him out and letting him finish bleeding to death. I somewhat felt satisfied that the Hollands were avenged, but that didn't matter now as I tried to get out of my predicament. I tried shifting through, but I felt that one of my legs was broken and the other sprained, so it was going to be really hard to get out of my compacted spot. I tried to breathe, but felt something being jabbed into my chest. When I looked down, I saw the vial of my life's work sticking out of my shirt's pocket with a mixture of the serum and my blood coming out. I realized that I ended up being stabbed too deeply and I was probably going to die here with the growing flames consuming my lab, killing all of the plants inside of it. My eyes kept on glancing all around me, and something that was precious to me caught my eye. I tried to reach for it, but the struggle kept on having the vial dig deeper into my chest, but I didn't care. I soon got it in my hand and I pulled it towards me to see the picture frame containing the one sweet moment of both of me and Naruto being together when we had just started going out. The pain was too much for me and I started to cry before I uttered a few last words. Naruto. I love Dash. Kaboom! Chapter 7, The Cat and the Batmeat and Nobody Else. Part 1. Beep, asterisk beep asterisk, asterisk beep asterisk, asterisk beep asterisk, asterisk beep asterisk, asterisk beep asterisk. The sounds of the heart monitor filled the room as Naruto sat in one of the chairs. His hazel eyes were evidently red from crying when he found her in the wreckage of the botanical department of Star Labs. The memories were still fresh in his mind, and every time he kept thinking of that moment hours ago he would unshed freshly made tears. He had just gotten off from a long day at work when he had gotten the phone call from Pam that she needed a ride to either of their places due to her car not working. He was so happy to hear that she had finally completed the serum, the life stream of both her and the Hollands, that he had several ideas running through his head on how to properly celebrate the accomplishment. But as Naruto was getting closer to his destination, a growing feeling was rising in the pit of his stomach that something was going to happen. His gut never failed him before, aside from prior moments of him having food poisoning, that he sped his car past the speed limits. When he came onto Star Labs, everything seemed fine and went towards the entrance of the building until the botanical labs exploded in a fiery blaze. He feared of what happened and quickly called 911 and reported what happened before hanging up to find Pam. Naruto had to use his powers to get rid of most of the debris so he can properly search her. Eventually he made it to her lab and found her underneath a bookcase with various cuts and burns along with most of her hair burned off. Once he got outside, with Pam in his arms, he was greeted with the sight of the paramedics showing up and he had brought his girlfriend to them. For the entire ride towards the hospital, he felt like he was having mini heart attacks with seeing Pam's vitals going out of control as they tried to stabilize her. Even with the surgery, which he couldn't track how long it took, all he could think about was Pam and wished she can make it through. His thoughts were interrupted as he heard the door to the hospital room open to see Bruce Wayne there. Naruto. I just got back into town when I heard of what happened and I came as soon as I could, he said as he quietly closed the door. Hey Bruce, sorry that you had to come back to this, Naruto tiredly said to him before looking back at Pam. Bruce looked around the room to see a spare chair and pulled it next to the publisher. How is she? Is she going to pull through? Barely. I was so damn lucky that an ambulance showed up when it did and had to keep her stabilized on the ride over. If they didn't respond quick enough. Naruto, don't think of that. How could I, Bruce? The publisher said to the dark-haired man. If only I could have been there sooner, then none of this would have happened, then this wouldn't happen to Pam. Nothing was said after that as the sounds of the heart monitor were filling up the room. Bruce then glanced over to Pam's prone form and took in the various details of her appearance. Many wraps were around her body that made her look like a stereotypical mummy, with hints of her right leg being in a cast underneath the bedsheets. There were many wires attached to her body, with some tubes were inserted into her to help with her breathing. So, what's her condition? Bruce asked. From what I was told by the doctor, there are burns of various degrees around her body that will take time to heal. She has scars around her body from the glass along with her right leg being broken. But, I'm more worried about her head, the Uzumaki stated, piquing Wayne's brief curiosity. What do you mean? They said that there was a deep gash on her head with some blunt force trauma from what they had seen through X-rays and CAT scans, Naruto said as he slowly tightened his hands. I'm worried, Bruce. I don't know if Pam will forget about me or her mother or anything she considered her precious in her memories. Bruce placed a comforting hand on his friend's shoulder before speaking. Naruto, she'll be fine. You just need to try and relax. She's in very capable hands. I know, Bruce. I just hope she wakes up all right. Excuse me, Mr. Uzumaki. A voice called out, getting the two people to look towards the doorway to see one of the hospital's nurses. Commissioner Gordon is outside and would like to speak with you. Oh, thank you, Naruto said with slight surprise as he rose from his seat and headed out of the room with Bruce soon following. Naruto was about to get out when he momentarily glanced back to Pam's unconscious form before stepping out. The two men looked around before seeing Commissioner James Gordon by the nurses' station along with Detective Harvey Bullock. James Gordon had a well-fit appearance in his suit and tie attire while wearing a brown trench coat. He had combed auburn hair with the sides of his head showing signs of it going gray while wearing a pair of thick-rimmed glasses with a thick mustache. Harvey Bullock was a pleasantly plump, dark-haired man wearing a yellow shirt and red tie while the rest of his attire was dark gray on the pants, trench coat and his hat. Naruto Uzumaki, I'm sorry to what has happened and you have my condolences. The auburn man said to the publisher. Thank you, Commissioner. Naruto replied back. So, is there any reason why you two are here? Yes, there is. My investigators had searched Star Labs to figure out what happened since I didn't want to rule out of accidental gas leaks unlike some people I know. James said before glancing to the detective who was innocently whistling while munching on a donut. And did you find anything for how this happened? We did. It took a while to search through the wrecked lab, but we found several things. Which would be? Bruce asked since he was curious as well. We found a burnt-up corpse in the lab and once going through dental records, we were able to identify it as Dr. Jason Woodrue. This surprised the two men and wondered why he was in there. But why was he there? Was Woodrue there to help Pam out? Naruto asked, getting Gordon to shake his head. I'm afraid not. After going through the autopsy report, it showed that the man's throat was gouged out, indicating that Ms. Isley had stabbed him. But why would she do that? There is literally not a mean bone in her body as far as I have known her. Naruto argued in hopes of protecting her. When I found her, she was all cut up and underneath a bookcase. I wasn't finished, Mr. Uzumaki, and I'm not accusing her on cold-blooded murder. The commissioner said to calm the publisher down. As the Silverette did, the bespectacled man continued with his explanation. I had my investigators look through the security tapes at Star Labs to figure out what happened, and it was revealed that the late doctor was the cause of the explosion. Naruto felt several things go through his system as he narrowed his eyes and slowly tightened his fists. Taking a deep breath, he tried to calm down a bit more. Mind explaining, please? The hazel-eyed man said, getting Gordon to nod. Once going through the video footage, it was revealed that Woodrue was rummaging through Ms. Isley's lab in the attempt of stealing her work and pass it off as his own. After coming up empty, he ended saying his intentions and confessing that he had hired people down south to steal the work from Alec and Linda Holland, but they ended up killing them. He did what? Naruto growled out in response. Gritting his teeth, he tried to calm down, but it wasn't helping all that well. Yeah, and your botanist girlfriend ended up hearing his confession and started yelling at him. Bullock said after finishing his donut. That was before the asshole tried to kill her. Harvey, that's not helping. Gordon sternly said to his detective. Gritting his teeth badly as his anger was starting to rise to the surface while his hands were tightly gripped enough to break the skin. Blood would have dropped if his powers didn't make it fade away. Bruce had placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder to calm him down. He was going to yell at his friend when he saw Pam's prone form through the room's window. If Woodrue was still alive and kicking, then I would kill him myself for what he has done. The Uzumaki growled out as he was starting to well up in tears. Well, Ms. Isley is being counted for self-defense, and we had called Louisiana State Police of what happened so they can inform the Hollands family and friends while searching for the hired thugs. James informed the two civilians. Thanks for letting us know, Gordon. I'm glad that despite Woodrue being dead, that he has been brought to justice. The publisher stated, getting the others to nod at that. But one thing that I don't get is, why didn't Woodrue stop the security tapes from running before he raided Pam's lab? Bruce questioned to fill in that little gap. Guess he was too impatient and rummaged the place before doing that. Successful or not, he would have erased the tapes afterwards. Bullock said as the others felt a little satisfied despite the incident from earlier. Anyways, we should get going. I hope you rest easily, Mr. Uzumaki. The commissioner said before he and the detective left. Thanks for holding me back there, Bruce. I would have blown my top if you hadn't. No problem. Wayne said. So, what will you do now? I'm staying here for the night. I don't want to leave Pam's side, and I want to be here when she wakes up, hopefully. She will, Naruto. Just give her time. Bruce said as he is starting to walk away. I should thank you, Bruce. The silver-haired male said, getting his friend to turn around. For what exactly? For blackmailing me to go to the gala. Naruto said, getting Bruce to adopt a confused look. Why would you thank me for that? Wouldn't you be mad at me for doing that to you? Oh, I'm still mad at that, so expect a prank going your way. Bruce shuddered when hearing that tidbit. From what he had heard about the Uzumaki, that he had pranked several people badly, that left him become a bit infamous on the actions. One of them was sneaking into one person's office last week and painting the entire place in Kill Me Orange. The police couldn't pin Naruto to the incident, but they all knew the Silverette was the culprit. Unknown to Bruce, Naruto was thinking of the same event. When the publisher was training to use his skills when Pam was out of town, he wanted to test his current skill set on a few individuals. During a previous date with Pam, one man was harassing his girlfriend in various ways that made Naruto want to punch his clock in, but the man was of high standing in Gotham and Naruto couldn't lift a finger against him. So once Pam was gone, Naruto used his grappling scarf and phasing ability to break into the man's office and finally release some long-awaited pranking. Ah, it felt so damn good to do that. The former shinobi thought with a chuckle before shaking his head. No, I'm talking about that if you hadn't blackmailed me then I wouldn't have met Pam. She was there? Bruce asked in surprise. Yes, she was. The publisher said with a small smile. Anyways, I'll see you later, Bruce. See you later then, Naruto, and hope you have a pleasant sleep over this. I'll try, Bruce. I'll try. With that said and done, Bruce headed off his way while thinking over the recent events. He felt horrible on what happened to his friend's girlfriend and wished he could have prevented that, but it's too late now. Maybe I'll help out by paying off the medical bills. Though I'll have to wait and see how the Star Labs board of directors will do with the recent events before I act on my own accord. The billionaire thought as he headed home for the evening before going out on patrol as the Dark Knight. Back with Naruto, he headed back inside of the hospital room and sat back down next to Pam's bedside. He slipped his hand into hers and gripped it slightly. I don't know if you can hear me or not, Pam, but I finally learned of what happened. I am so sorry on what happened to you, and I wish this didn't happen to you at all. I was so scared when I saw the botanical labs explode and I rushed in to find and see if you okay. At this point, the silver-haired male felt his voice breaking as those memories earlier came back. But when I found you, oh Cammy, I didn't think that you would have made it, but I needed to save you. I couldn't imagine my life now without you with how much you mean to me. By now, he was shedding tears and tried wiping them away with his other arm, but it was no use. I love you so much that it would have killed me if you died. So please, do me a favor and live for me. The Pam I know and love doesn't give up this easily. You never gave up on your passion for the environment and you did everything you can to make it better by making that serum of yours. You finally accomplished your goal along with the Hollands, but you can't stop there, Pam. You've got to see this through. Sniffle, so please. Sniffle, please wake up, Pam. I love you. He said as he leaned up and kissed her cheek before leaning his head on his other arm on the bed as a makeshift pillow for the night while slightly crying himself to sleep. If he would have seen her face, he could have seen a tear fall down from one of her eyes that gained a faint, green glow before it died out. Few days later. Well. I hope that this night goes well. Naruto said as he pulled his car up to the building where the animal rights event was taking place before a valet came up to him to park it. Once stepping out of the car, some people recognized him as he wore a dark gray suit and tie. As the publisher was past the entrance of the building, he was remembering what occurred in the past several days. Ever since that night when Pam was admitted to the hospital, Naruto was down in the dumps to a certain degree, but he did what he could to try and raise his spirits. For the past few days, for roughly an hour or so, he would stop on by with a bouquet of flowers to check up on her and inform her unconscious form on the day's events. He had requested the doctors to inform him if any changes happened to her, since he was now her emergency contact, like the very moment when she wakes up, so he can come and see her. Even during one of the visits, he had seen Grace stop on by to check up on Pam and give her condolences from both her and Harvey. From what Naruto had heard from Star Labs after the incident, the board of directors of the Gotham branch fully discredited Dr. Jason Woodrue on what he has done that night and had wanted to pay Pam's medical bills in full from Woodrue's salary and earnings they had seized from his bank accounts and assets. It did help settle Naruto's nerves a bit more that Woodrue would be paying more for what he has done, especially with what remaining money that was taken was sent off to the friends and family of Alec and Linda Holland for their troubles. But it still didn't fix on what had been done, as it will be a rough time to heal from. The other thing that Naruto has done during the past few days was working more on his loveless story, since he wasn't in the mood to train in his abilities at the time. With the recent events and the drive, Naruto was able to finish up the third act while starting on the second to last act of his book. Possibly by the next month, he might be able to finish up writing the epic poem before getting it edited and then published in the following month. Back to the current matter at hand, Naruto made it to the event hall where the dating auction was taking place to see the room somewhat jammed-packed with a variety of Gotham's wealthy and celebrities. It was going to be very hard to navigate and make his way through without fully playing one of his favorite games, Know Your Neighbor. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" A familiar voice called out from behind as the Silverette turned around to see Bruce in one of his nice suits. "Oh, hey Bruce. Man, it is really packed here, isn't it?" "Yes, it is, but you still didn't answer my question. Why are you here?" "I thought you would still be looking over Pam," Bruce stated as he crossed his arms with a small smile seeing his friend here. "Well, if you remember, Pam wanted me to attend this event since it's helping out the wildlife," Naruto told the billionaire. "Besides, if I didn't go to this, then Pam would probably kick my ass 6 ways till Sunday." This got Bruce to laugh a little at the statement, as he knew that Naruto must have kept his promise with Pam regardless of what happened to her. "So, are you going to be participating by being auctioned off or going to buy yourself a date?" "Neither, I'm afraid. I promised Pam I would attend, and even with recent events I think it would be hard for me to attempt to buy a date or even try to go upstage. Even I have limits, despite Pam possibly wanting to see me up there, and wonder how much someone will bid for me." Hearing this, Bruce nodded at Naruto's excuse. "Well then, I think you should still head over to get yourself checked in at least and inform them that you wouldn't want to be bidded on then." "I'll do that then." Naruto walked off in search of the check-in station, since it was supposed to be inside of the event hall, unless he was mistaken and it was supposed to be outside of it. As he made his way through the crowd, he ends up bumping into a woman on an accidental shove from someone else. "I'm so sorry about that," he apologized. "It's really hard to move around here with all these people." "It's no problem at all," the female said as she turned around to see the one apologizing to her. When the two looked at each other, they ended up dismantling each other through their gazes to take in as much detail as they can. The woman had short black hair in a pixie cut with bright and sharp green eyes, while wearing a red, strapless dress that hung around her neck as it flowed past her ankles and hugged her form nicely. She wore little to no makeup, with her just having red lipstick along with a pair of earrings that matched the little ornament on her dress just above her breasts. In his honest opinion, she was rather stunning, and he tried to keep a blush down. But something about her was nagging at him at the back of his skull that he had seen her before, but where? On the woman's end, she couldn't help but admire his appearance as well and wondered if he was participating in this event so she could maybe buy a date from him. When she saw the blush, she couldn't help but found it cute, with it brightening up his cheeks a little to pop out his whisker marks. They must be birthmarks, since there is no way they can be tattoos or scars, she thought to herself. Sorry, and don't mind me staring. Didn't know if you were fine with that," Naruto said to her as he scratched the back of his head in his nervous habit. "It's quite all right. In fact, I was checking you out as well, so don't feel too bothered by that." "Well, if you insist." He laughed a little before composing himself and held out his hand. "Naruto Uzumaki. Selena Kyle." she responded as she shook his hand before remembering where she heard that name.
Aren't you the owner and founder of Spiral Publishing?
Guilty as charged, he said with a smile with his eyes closed that made her think that he was imitating a fox.
I gotta say, I really love many of the books you published and even enjoyed the ones you wrote. But pardon me for asking, but why are you here attending this event? Selena questioned the publisher.
Well, I'm here because of my girlfriend on her insistence for me to come here for the wildlife, he answered, which got her to feel disappointed on the response. Damn, he's already taken, and such a shame too since he is quite the looker, she thought without even showing it before a question came to mind.
But if you're in a relationship, then why are you even here exactly? You plan on cheating on her?
This got him to quickly argue on her little accusation.
No, nothing of the sort at all. Then why are you here? Selena pressed on for an answer with a slight glare.
Like I said, she insisted on me to go to this event with her, he said with a straight face.
But earlier this week, she was in an accident and is now in a coma at Gotham General.
I made a promise with her that I would come here because of her love of the environment, both flora and fauna. His response shocked her a little as she didn't know his girlfriend was in such a state.
I am sorry to hear that, Naruto. Forgive me on accusing you in such manner. It's all right, Selena. No harm, no foul,
he stated to reassure her. I should have said more of that a bit ago, but tried not to go too deep on that subject.
It's fine and I understand,
the dark-haired woman said before a familiar voice to both people called out.
Selena! There you are. I was looking all over for you,
the voice said as the person came closer to the two and Naruto saw a familiar sight.
Sorry about that, Shizune. It's quite hard to move around here with so many people,
Selena said before turning to Naruto.
Oh Shizune, I should probably introduce you. Shizune, this is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto, this is Shizune, my assistant. Nice to meet you, Mr. Uzumaki,
the assistant said to the silverette as she held out her hand while the other was holding onto a folder of sorts. To Naruto, she looked very similar to the Shizune he knew back in his old reality, but the only differences were the lengths and styles of their hair along with their cough assets. While the Shizune in his old world had short, straight hair with being small-chested. The Shizune in front of him had long, wavy hair that was tied back into a high ponytail with her having D-cup breasts along with her wearing a pair of glasses. For the rest of her attire, she was currently wearing a business suit despite the formal wear everyone else was wearing, making her stand out a bit.
Same to you, Shizune,
he said as he shook her hand in turn before addressing the green-eyed woman.
Since you've known what I do for a living, what about you, Selena?
Well, I mostly do fundraising for charities, which are primarily towards wildlife preservation,
Selena explained, which got Naruto to smile on the information. Ah, good to know.
I have a feeling you mostly go to these events or others of the sort to seek out wealthy philanthropists and spend their money on good causes. Primarily for the betterness towards animal life.
Very much so,
Selena said with a smile.
I have a feeling you have a similar experience in this sort of thing. Remember when I said earlier with my girlfriend being very compassionate with wildlife, both flora and fauna?
She nodded at his question before he continued. Well, she is a botanist who was researching and developing a serum for the betterment of plant life and in turn animals.
Really? Well, that's interesting,
Shizune responded with her friend nodding in agreement. You said was if I'm not mistaken.
Are you telling me she is done with her serum?
Yes, she is well, it's the reason why she ended up in her accident. Naruto confessed in that particular detail, causing the two women to let that sink in and understand what happened, with Shizune asking a bit more on that detail to her friend.
I am sorry to hear, and I wish for a speedy recovery for her,
Shizune said to the hazel-eyed man. It's fine, Shizune, and I wish the same thing, he said before looking at Selena.
You know,
With how you two are compassionate with the environment, I have a feeling you two might get along.
I think you might be right.
Anyways, I think the event is going to start soon and I need to use the restroom for a moment.
It's been nice chatting with you, Naruto. Selena said as she walked off. Same to you.
He quickly said as she gave him a little nod, with Shizune following suit. As the event started, with Naruto forgetting to check in due to chatting with Selena for too long, many individuals of both genders were called out one by one and were bidded in various amounts that were being put towards animal rights. From what he could tell, a lot of the people being bidded on will end up in the tabloids by the end of the week with who is dating whom. After a dozen or so bids, things started to pick up a bit more.
Next, we'll be auctioning off a date with Gotham's most eligible bachelor, Mr. Bruce Wayne. The auctioning host said into his microphone as spotlights were circling the crowd to find the billionaire.
Now if Mr. Wayne would be so kind to step up or make his presence known. At this, most of the crowd was murmuring on where Wayne was currently at.
Oh now.
Don't be shy, good sir, the women won't bite, I'm sure. Eventually, the host was finally able to spot him when one of the spotlights finally found its target.
Ah, there he is.
Bruce was in the spotlight now and decided to wave to the attendees for the event as he made his way towards the stage.
From where Naruto was standing, he could see many women of varying ages and appearances were closing up on the billionaire.
Remember, we got a lot of animals to save, so we'll start the bidding at $500. The host said before women started throwing out numbers left and right.
500. 600. We have $600. Do I hear 7? $700. 8. 1,000.
Hearing the amounts piling up, the host couldn't help but chuckle.
Oh ho. Well. That's $1,000. Going once. Going $10,000.
A familiar voice called out as everyone gasped and turned towards the source. With Naruto, he already knew who it was as he quickly found Selena in the spotlight not too far away with a smile on her face.
Damn.
She really wanted to make a spectacle out of herself and put a lot towards the cause. The publisher thought as he started to laugh to himself.
THTH, do I hear any more bids?
The auctioning host said with a stutter, but there were no responses.
Going once. Going twice.
Then sold for $10,000 to, Ms. Selena Kyle. Things quieted down as Bruce made his way towards Selena and Naruto decided to meet up with him.
It's a pleasure, Bruce said to the black-haired beauty. Well, thank you.
The two turned towards the source to see Shizune coughing into her hand for their attention.
Ah, Mr. Wayne. My secretary Shizune.
Said woman opened up the folder and started writing something inside of it before ripping it out. From what Naruto was seeing, it was a check probably for bidding for Bruce.
How do you do? He said as he was handed the check. Please, it's Bruce and I'm very flattered.
Selena folded her hands together as she kept her face straight after receiving the compliment.
Please understand that this is purely for the animals, Mr. Wayne.
So, you're off the hook. As she was walking away, Bruce ended up grabbing her wrist before speaking out.
But you're not.
I beg your pardon.
What he means, Selena, is that you bought him for a date.
Naruto said, drawing attention to him.
Naruto? You know her? Well, somewhat.
I met her a bit before the auction started and we chatted a little. Naruto said before continuing.
Wasn't there something you were going to say to Selena, Bruce?
When hearing this, the dark-haired man ended up blushing a little, which Naruto couldn't help but find this hilarious and kept his composure.
Oh, this is such a very rare sight to see indeed.
Well, like Naruto said, you bought yourself a date.
So, I am honor-bound and delighted to receive.
And I should warn you, I am not a man who gives up easily.
Believe me, Selena, the man speaks the truth. He won't stop at nothing to see things through," Naruto said, backing up his friend's claim.
After a few moments to think to herself, the raven-haired woman responded.
"Alright then, how about lunch? Tomorrow perhaps?" "Sounds good to me,"
Bruce said before gunfire could be heard from outside.
"I wonder what's going on," Shizune said. "Same here." "What do you think, Bruce?"
Naruto asked before seeing his friend was missing.
"Bruce? Huh, where'd he go? Maybe he went to the auction host to turn in the check to verify the date payment," guessed the assistant with a shrug. "We should probably get going. Shizune, mind hailing us a cab?" Selena asked her friend. "Sure thing. Would you guys be fine hailing a cab?" Naruto asked, getting the two to stop their actions. Why would you ask that?"
the raven-haired woman asked with a raised brow. "Well, with that gunfire outside, I'm guessing that some firefight is happening nearby, and even when it's over, some roads are going to be blocked off for who knows how long, thus causing the cab driver to charge you more on the fare."
After hearing his argument, the two women couldn't help but agree on his reasoning. "It seems sound, but what are you suggesting we do instead?" "Well, maybe I could give you two a lift," he said to Selena.
"Maybe if you're offering and you seem to be a very nice guy, then I'll possibly take up on your offer."
"Great, well let's head up front and get my car."
The small group of three went towards the entrance of the building as he hailed the valet to bring up his car.
It wasn't long before his vehicle arrived, since a lot of the festivity is still going on inside.
Once they climbed into the car, Naruto decided to ask Selena a question.
"So, me ladies, where should I drop you two off?" "You can drop us off at the Skyline Towers?" Shizune said, before noticing the look on his face. "What, is it something I said?" "No, not really. It's just that I actually live there." "Really? Well, that is interesting to know," Selena said with interest before Naruto drove them to their destination. Skyline Towers. It took a while to get to their destination due to traffic, but they made it to their residences. On the way over, the three had a pleasant conversation on various topics that they were passionate towards. "So, you're currently sponsoring a wildlife preservation outside of Gotham? Man, that is quite a project you have there." "Yes, it is. With the population of mountain lions present on this city's borders, I would feel comfortable to have them along with many other animals to live there, so both them and us humans be safe from each other," explained the raven-haired beauty. "Well, I wish you the best of luck. And if Pam was with us right now, I bet she would say the same thing," he said as they drove into the parking garage for the towers. "You're too kind, Naruto, and I wish she was here with us now." "I would have been happy to meet her." "Me too," Shizune said in agreement as they were walking towards the elevator. Once inside, she pressed the 50th floor button, causing Naruto to look at in curiosity. "Wait, she is a floor below me," he mildly thought before looking back at Selena as some memories started to seep towards the forefront of his mind. Naruto soon imagined Selena in lesser clothing and her soaking wet. "Wait. Isn't she, oh shit." Naruto yelled in his head as he realized on why Selena looked so damn familiar. "I saw her naked last month." "Oh, fucking Cammy, this is going to be awkward now." "Well, once again, it's been nice meeting you, Naruto, and thanks for the ride," Selena said to him, not knowing what was going on in his head. Cough. "Well, thank you, Selena," he said while trying to get rid of the image of her wet and naked out of his head. "Oh, and I was wondering if I could make a contribution to the wildlife preserve." "And Naruto, you don't have to do that." She tried to decline his offer, but he waved his hand in response. "Mama, it's quite alright, Selena. It's the least I can do to help you out," he said as he pulled out his checkbook and pen from his jacket's pocket. "Besides, I didn't participate in the auction and Pam would scold me if I didn't at least contribute to the event." "Well, if you insist."
Selena said as she tried to avert his gaze. Shizun wasn't even better as she was compassionate in her work alongside her friend/boss and wasn't expecting any contributions for today. But with Naruto being a very successful publisher, he obviously had more wealth above average society, especially with the rumored and known connections the Silverette has.
So then, how does $20,000 sound to you, Miss Kyle? He said as he wrote the amount onto the check.
This caused the two women to feel as time suddenly stopped on what he just said before turning their gaze at him in shock.
$2-20,000 is he serious?
Were their respective thoughts before Selena voiced their response.
I don't know what to say.
You're welcome, by the way, and I hope you'll go far with this to help the environment. Quickly composing herself, she responded with a genuine smile.
I very much will, Naruto, and thank you. This will possibly help me finish solidifying the offer on the preserve outside of Gotham. The elevator stopped and opened up as they had reached Selena's and Shizun's designated floor.
The two women stepped out and turned around to see Naruto one last time. I hope you have a good night, Naruto, and thank you very much on your donation. Shizun said with a bow before the elevator closed on him. Saiman, this night was really interesting. I hope my contribution to her cause could make a difference. Unknown to either side, Naruto had made a donation to Selena twice in both of their alternate personas. Next day, Selena's and Shizun's loft. It was appearing to be a pleasant day in Gotham as the sun was shining without a cloud in sight, despite the cold air hanging around the city. To Selena, it was pretty much a nice day for her to go out for her lunch date, but some thoughts were still plaguing her mind.
She was currently a dark purple blouse with a black skirt with a pair of 1-inch black heel shoes while brushing her hair in the mirror despite it being short. Aren't you a little excited for your date?
I mean, it's Bruce Wayne, tall, dark, and disgustingly rich.
Shizun said to her friend as she was getting food out for Isis. I'd rather have it be with Batman,
admitted the secret cat burglar.
Oh Shizun, you should have seen him. He had the eyes of a lion. How would you know he has eyes of a lion?
It would be hard to actually see them with that cowl of his.
Shizun pointed out her friend's slight mistake.
Chuckles, I guess you're right. I probably meant to say his gaze, not eyes.
And what about Naruto? What about him? Selena asked as the Uzumaki suddenly came into the conversation.
Well, he is very charming and cares much about the environment, probably as much as you do.
But you forget Shizun, he's currently taken.
And such a shame too. If he was available, then I would try and snatch him up.
Then you'll have to beat me first, Selena threatened in a jokingly manner.
Or better yet, there's still that nobody, still an odd name, you told me about.
Oh yes, him.
Ever since that Christmas night at the Gotham Clock Tower, there were times that Selena kept fantasizing about seeing the masked acrobat. With how he moved and reacted to the simplest things when he was performing his tricks. He kept on doing things that made her stop breathing and her heart racing while even saving her precious Isis from certain death. All this made her want to see him even more to possibly have that little thrill again. Not to mention of him practically giving her the cat's eyes emeralds wasn't bad either. But alas, she hasn't been able to find the man ever since, much to her disappointment.
Ring 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 ring.
They heard the phone go off as Shizun was making her way towards it while cutting Selena off from her thoughts. But honestly, Selena, at least Bruce Wayne is a good connection.
We might be able to use him,
the assistant said before picking up the phone.
Hello, Selena and Shizun residence. Knock knock. That's probably him now,
Selena said to herself as she made her way to her door.
She's probably right.
But still though, I wish it would have been better if it was Batman standing behind this door. Once opening up the entrance to her loft, she was just expecting Bruce Wayne, but it was a surprise to see Naruto there as well.
And Naruto, what are you doing here?
Oh, I was coming back from seeing Pam at the hospital when I ran into Bruce when he entered the building.
We chatted and I was quite surprised that you two are practically neighbors. said the billionaire. And why would you say that?
Selena questioned with the tilt of her head. I know you live here in the towers, Naruto, from what you told us last night, but you never told me which floor.
To tell you the truth, I actually live right just above you too. Really? Well, that's quite interesting to know. Also, sorry Bruce, it's very nice to see you.
Selena said as she went back to her lunch date, who waved her off.
It's quite all right, Selena,
Bruce said to her as he handed her a bouquet of flowers.
Here, these are for you.
Why thank you, she replied as she took a whiff of the flowers.
Oh, where are my manners? Please come in, you two.
The two men entered the loft with Naruto closing the door.
You are even more stunning than I imagined, Bruce said to the raven-haired beauty, which got Naruto to raise an eyebrow. That's an odd thing to say out of the blue, he thought before turning his gaze towards the green-eyed woman. Though I do have to admit, she is rather stunning. Before anything else could be said, Shizen came up to them seeming urgent. Selena, it's your lawyer.
He says that the preservation deal is off.
What?
Selena angrily said, getting a shocked reaction from Naruto on Shizen's statement.
Are you serious? I don't know, but I intend to find out,
the woman said as she handed the flowers to Shizen before going over to the phone and picked it up.
Martin, what happened?
But that's ridiculous. You need to call him back and tell him I would want to speak with him.
But, it has to be today. He can't, Martin. He can't sell the land to Multigan since we had an agreement. What's going on, Naruto? You seem to know what's happening, Bruce asked his friend with Shizen not too far from them. Selena was negotiating land for a wildlife preserve.
I had thought that the money I gave her last night would have been enough, the former shinobi replied back. It was Naruto, but it seemed that Multigan had muscled their way through and paid extra to topple over what you gave us.
I'm so sorry though, the assistant said apologetically.
But what do you mean he won't take any of your calls?
Selena called out, getting all attention back towards her. You need to go over there.
Even if you have to kick the door down, I need that land for the mountain lions, Selena said before slamming the phone down on the receiver.
Why does this have to happen now? We were so close,
the raven-haired woman muttered as she sat down on the couch while rubbing her head in frustration.
I am sorry, but I'm afraid that I won't be good company. Is there anything I could do? Bruce said in concern. Not if you could land me a meeting with the chairman of Multigan International,
she replied with a strained laugh in the end. Bruce thought for a moment before walking over to the phone and started punching in a phone number.
So what time is good for you?
The two women stared at the man in surprise while Naruto couldn't help but chuckle a little on the display.
I'm starting to like him after all,
Selena said as Shizen put a hand on her shoulder for comfort.
Multigan International.
Bruce was able to set up a meeting a few hours later once things died down.
Selena, Bruce and Naruto went over to the corporate tower of Multigan International to find the bottom of this.
The raven-haired woman told the publisher he didn't have to come, but he told them that this concerns him as well, that it affects the environment very much and Pam wouldn't want this to happen at all. The three were currently inside the office of Mr. Stern, the chairman of Multigan, which was littered with animal heads, feeling a tad impatient as the man was chatting with them.
But honestly, Wayne, I wish there was something I could do for you three.
But the deal was quite set, the chairman said to them as he played a little bit of what Naruto believed to be part of Beethoven's Ode to Joy on a piano bit on his alcohol counter. Once the little sequence was done, part of the floor opened up to show a display for what Multigan was planning.
A vacation/entertainment resort.
You see, we are committed to build a major resort, golf course, tennis courts, a spa, a swimming pool, the works, Mr. Stern said, getting Selena and Naruto to feel disgusted.
But that's insane. It's in the middle of nowhere and it's worthless except for the wildlife. Not to mention for environmentalists, with how many acres of trees are there? Naruto said, adding to back up Selena's claim.
The chairman only had a smug smile as he shook his head at them.
But you don't see the developmental potential, and as for the animals, we'll take care of them. One way or another.
With his piece done, he walked over to the door and ushered them out. Now you excuse me, I'm all out of available time I could spare.
Selena just hotly laughed in response to that.
Oh, you'll find plenty of time with me, Mr. Stern.
Before I'm through, every environmental group and animal rights activists breathing down your neck. They'll be looking down on you and your project so closely that you'll look like a bug in a kid's glass jar.
Selena soon left with Naruto in tow, who glared at the man as he left.
Hope you have a nice day,
Bruce said as he soon followed the two. Once the three were gone, the chairman went back into his office and waited by a wall before it started to rise up from the ground to show a very fit, muscle-bound woman in a red bodysuit with black arm guards, sash and combat boots walking towards him. She had long, black hair that reached the middle of her back with 2 white streaks. Her green eyes were those of a killer while complementing several scars on her face. The last detail on her person was a tattoo of a red bear paw print with claws on her bare right shoulder.
For anyone who doesn't know who this dangerous-looking woman is.
Well, she is Red Claw, international terrorist and one of the most wanted throughout most of the world.
I'm afraid that Selena Kyle is going to be trouble, madam. We've come too far for our plans to be jeopardized by some environmentalist and fanatic.
Red Claw said in a thick Russian accent.
Have someone keep an eye on Ms. Kyle.
I want to know every action she is taking, whether she is going to work or going out for meals. I don't even care if I have to know when she takes a shit.
I want her followed. With that said, she walked back into the hidden hallway as the hidden wall closed back up. Meanwhile, outside. I'm afraid I wasn't that much help after all, Selena,
Bruce said as they walked out of the building.
At least we know what their cover story is,
she replied, getting Naruto to nod.
But something else is going on and I feel it's something big. They were near the parking lot when Selena gained Bruce's attention. It's getting awfully late for lunch. Can we have a rain check on it, please?
She hopefully asked, which got Bruce to smile. Of course, and besides, this was more important to you than just some lunch, mind you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Maybe we could reschedule for tomorrow perhaps,
he suggested to her.
Sounds wonderful,
she said to him before continuing. It'll give me some time to help take care of business this evening.
Now that I think about it, I think I have some business to attend to as well tonight,
Wayne said in a tone that seemed he had an ulterior motive.
Selena didn't pick it up, but Naruto did.
Being a shinobi, even being a retired one, for years would get him to pick up subtle things.
Then I'll see you tomorrow, Bruce. Same time? She asked. Definitely. Until then.
The dark-haired man responded before making his way to his car. He was starting to plan things out for the evening, like squeezing information from a mob boss or two about Red Claw and why he was in Gotham.
So, Selena,
Naruto said as the two neighbors were walking towards his car.
Need any help on the things you have going on tonight?
No, I think I'll be fine doing it on my own, but thanks for the offer.
That's fine.
Besides, friends should help each other out when needed, he stated, getting her to look at him questionably.
You consider me your friend, Naruto?
Yeah, I consider both you and Shizune my friends. I do what I can to help them out to the best of my capabilities. With how things are going on as of late, one would need their friends for support. She felt touched by this and smiled at him.
Thank you. It means a lot to hear that.
You're welcome. A thought then came to him as he pulled out his wallet, which confused the environmentalist. The publisher then pulled out a pen and wrote something in it before handing it over to Selena.
What's this?
She asked as she saw his business card.
Turn it over and you'll see my cellular and home phone numbers.
You might as well start knowing them just in case you want to contact me on anything. She was glad to get this information as it would help her out on a later date. They went into his car and made their way back to the Skyline Towers to do their own agendas, not knowing that they'll meet up again later.
Later, Multigan International. Dusk had fallen in Gotham as the cold breeze filled the air with remnants of snow on the various rooftops and streets below. The sound of snow crunching permeated the air before it came to a stop as the person in question stared up towards the higher levels of the corporate building.
"Well, Isis, time to get to work," Catwoman said to her pet around her neck as she leapt towards one of the ledges. It was quite a distance to reach, but the cat burglar pulled out her leather whip and had it latch against one of the building's hanging designs so she wouldn't fall down. Once having it steady, Selina started to climb up the whip before getting on top of the stonework. From there, she trekked her climb towards the top of the corporate building so she can be able to reach her destination. As she drew closer, she saw a light shining through the office window from above, realizing that the chairman was still in his office. Lucky for her, for when she reached it, Mr. Stern was just leaving for the night, or so she thought. If Mr. Stern won't admit what's going on, then we'll have to find out for ourselves, Selina said to Isis as she got off of her master. The thief used one of her sharp claws to cut into the glass big enough for a human to slip through it. Once safely on the ground, she looked around to see if anything was amiss as per her training.
"All clear?" her master called out.
"Meow." Isis called out with a nod, getting Catwoman to fall down to the office floor.
"I believe Beethoven's Ode to Joy will do the trick," Selina said as she came up to the alcohol counter and played the tune on the piano keys. Like before, the One Resort display rose up from the ground.
"I better thank Granny Kyle for the piano lessons when I get the chance," she muttered to herself as she kept on playing the song before the counter and the alcohol display started to move to reveal an intricate control panel with a safe on the bottom. Once the safe was fully on display, it opened for some reason as it scared off Isis to hide behind her master.
"Outstanding,"
Selina said at her apparent luck that she wouldn't have to safe crack this one as she pulled out her camera to take photos of many documents. Unknown to her, through one of the animal heads had a hidden camera that was recording live in the security feeds.
Meanwhile, despite our loss of arms, thanks to Batman's interference, we will be proceeding according to plan,
Red Claw said in front of her men in a hidden room of the Multigan corporate building. She was going to continue when the door opened, showing Mr. Stern walking in, feeling embarrassed in possibly interrupting his boss speech/lecture. "Anyways, tonight at 2300 hours, a train under military escort will pass through Gotham,"
the terrorist stated as a map of Gotham was shown on the wall.
"It will be transporting a strain of viral plague that Interpol had confiscated from our eastern laboratories. I cannot overemphasize the importance of the plague to our cause." She soon walked towards one side of the map and pointed towards a certain area of the train route.
"We'll hit the train outside of the city at this point and we'll dash." "Madam Claw," one thug called out.
"Yes, what is it?"
"Don't you see I'm doing a thing here?"
the Russian called out.
"You need to see this,"
he said, getting his boss to come on over to see Catwoman taking photos from the safe in Mr. Stern's office.
"Who is that?"
the Multigan chairman asked.
"A cat at the end of its 9 lives,"
Red Claw said as she pulled out a gun and slipped in a fresh magazine into it before heading out of the room to greet their guest.
Back with Catwoman.
Unknowns to her impending doom, Selina kept on taking photo after photo of various documents that would not only destroy Multigan's reputation and career but to also save the land she had wanted for the preserve.
"Meow. Meow,"
Isis called out to her master, feeling impatient.
"All right, Isis, I just got the last of them. We'll head back home now,"
she said before pounding on the office doors, altered the two that they must have been caught. Acting quickly, Selina grabbed Isis and went into the air ducts in hopes of making their escape. It was tight, but it was worth it to possibly get away from security that would possibly want to follow them in here. Of course, the thief would have been fine with it more if it wasn't for a few cobwebs here and there.
I think we are in over our heads,
Selena said as Isis seemed to give her a dirty look.
Oh, don't give me that look. You are in this as much as I do.
Isis didn't really respond as she rolled her eyes before a sound came into the air ducts. The two navigated for a bit before they saw a man with an assault rifle.
That's not a security guard,
Selena thought as the two cats went through another duct to get away from the man. For extra measure, the thief pulled off a pouch on her and dumped its contents on the air ducts, showing metallic tacks shaped like cats.
Ha, and Shizun said these wouldn't be useful,
she said with a smirk before moving forward. They soon reached a dead end as they ended up seeing an elevator shaft.
Well, only way out is up, I guess,
the thief said as she reached out and grabbed the metallic rope and started climbing up with Isis wrapped around her neck. They eventually made it to the top of the elevator shaft and went through another air duct that led towards the roof of the building.
Once climbing out, the environmentalist looked around to find an exit strategy as she heard pounding on the rooftop's door.
Deciding to take a chance, she ran towards a random direction.
Hang on, Isis,
Selena said as her cat responded by tightening her hold before the thief took a leap off of the rooftop. Unknown to her, Red Claw came through the rooftop door with her lackeys and saw where the cat burglar was heading towards and pulled out her miniature grenade launcher and fired. Once barely latching onto a rooftop ledge, she told Isis to get to safety before the roof exploded, causing her to fall. Selena tried to latch onto something, but she was thrown off too far away to grab a hold of anything. She screamed as her life started to flash before her eyes as she plummeted towards her doom before something or someone caught her. I hope I'm not too late, a male voice said to her as she looked towards the helmeted man who saved Isis on Christmas night.
It's you, Selena said in surprise. Have we met before? It seems you have, yet I haven't,
Naruto said in his nobody attire as he had his grappling scarf swing them around a building with all its stretchiness. It wasn't long before he willed his scarf to let go, getting them to land on a random rooftop.
We're safe now, miss. You can let go now. Selena didn't say anything as she kissed his helmet, getting the disguised publisher to widen his eyes. That's for saving my cat, Catwoman said with a smile.
I would give you a proper kiss if you took off that helmet.
Nope, not gonna happen,
Naruto said as he crossed his arms in a comedic X gesture before remembering her saying something before.
Wait, your cat?
He asked before feeling something brush against his leg. Looking down, he saw a familiar black cat.
Oh, hey little one, long time huh?
Nobody said as he picked the feline up and started petting her, causing the cat to purr.
That's my cat you're holding, just so you know,
the thief said, getting to look towards her.
Oh really? Well then I hope you enjoyed the present I left you.
I did actually, and I appreciated the gesture.
You're welcome then,
he said as he kept petting her before slowly coming to a stop.
Wait, how did you get up here? Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. That would be because of me,
a male voice called out, causing the two to look behind them to see Batman coming out from the shadows.
Hello there. Nice evening we have here, huh Batsy?
Nobody said in a cheerful tone, which didn't get a reaction out of the caped crusader.
Oh, lighten up will ya?
Once again, he was pretty silent before responding to the two of them. I heard gunfire nearby and came to investigate. I found your cat when I landed and took her with me.
You're welcome, by the way. Occupational hazard, I'm sure, Catwoman said with a smile. Nice to meet you again, Batman. So you two met before?
The masked acrobat asked as he got no response from that question. Isis soon got out of his arms and climbed on top of his head and sat down.
So little one, do you know how they met?
Isis responded by nodding her head.
Mind telling me? Her response was no. Please, with tuna on top. Once again, no. You're no fun.
Nobody said with a physical, comedic pout, causing Catwoman to giggle at the display while Batman was not responsive.
I'm going to be asking this politely. Why were you two at Multigan International? Batman sternly asked them. Wouldn't you like to know? Nobody replied back, getting the caped crusader to glare at him. While I'm at it, who are you? You don't know? Well, actually, I think you wouldn't know. Well, I'm nobody.
Naruto said as he willed an object into his hand.
My card.
Nobody tossed the card at the Batman, who dodged it easily, getting Catwoman to see the opportunity to close in and grab the costumed hero.
With a judo toss, she was able to throw Batman off the side of the building. She's it.
The masked man yelled out as he grabbed Catwoman in a fireman's carry and jumped off the building with Isis wrapped around his neck. He willed the grappling scarf to show up and latch onto one of the walls of a random building and swung around.
Hey, let me go,
she said as she tried to get off.
Really? You want me to let you go this high up? Oh. Sorry.
But did you really have to throw Batman off the rooftop?
Well, I saw a chance to leave and I ended up taking action. But throwing him off the building?
He had that grappling gun of his.
He'll be fine.
Gotcha. Nobody said as he willed his scarf to let go, getting him to land on a random rooftop a good distance away from Batman.
Thanks for the ride, by the way,
Catwoman said as she got off of the man with Isis following suit. Along with saving both me and my cat on separate occasions.
You're welcome, and I'll see you around,
the disguised Uzumaki said as he ran and jumped off the rooftop before going to God knows where, leaving the thief and her cat behind.
Selina's and Shizun's loft.
Catwoman landed in a crouch on her patio as she opened the door to see her roommate waiting for her.
So how did it go?
Shizun asked Selina from the couch as she was reading one of the books published from Spiral Publishing. Well, it had its highs and lows, but I did get pictures of what is going on with that Multigan resort site, Selina responded as she handed her assistant the camera. So, what did you see exactly? Apparently there is an abandoned military facility underground.
Interesting.
With what information I gathered, we are one step closer to saving those mountain lions. Unknown to the two occupants, one of Red Claw's goons was on a rooftop some distance away and saw the scene in the loft with a pair of binoculars and a listening device.
But question is, Miss Kyle, who will save you? To be continued. That's it for this reading.
Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction.
Looking forward to having you on board again.